Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of things with microphones because I'm a ring announcer and cage announcer. And I'm joined this week, as I always am, by my two buddies, my two co-hosts, both of whom bring MMA punditry to new heights, dare I say. Introducing to you first, fighting out of New York City, he is Mark Priaulx. Mark, what's up, buddy?
Not quite New York City.
True.
I can't claim that. Fairly close. Yeah, I was hoping you guys didn't come back. I really liked not having to talk to anyone and just give my takes.
Hey, slow clap for Mark doing a one-man show last week.
Thank you.
And it was awesome, dude. I loved it.
It was good.
Thanks, man. It wasn't bad. It's weird. It's like you feel more free to just say like whatever you want and not so worried about time, since obviously normally we're so worried about time because we have so much shit to do. But yeah, it was cool. But happy to have you guys back. I prefer, of course, the trio.
The banter.
Yes.
Speaking of the banter, he is the bantamweight from Florida. He is Omar Artola. What's up, buddy? Are you bantamweight? No, probably
I'm
not.
180 pounds right now. There's nothing bantam about this weight. I am.
I think you could cut about 45. What do you think?
Totally.
Chop off a leg?
Totally.
Yeah, basically. No, dude. That's not happening. I think the most I would ever get down to at this point is 155. And that's only because I think guys at 170 are too big.
And 155 would be hard as fuck.
Yeah.
To even pull that off.
Yeah. Anyway, what's up, boys? Your man's is sore as shit here, so we're hopefully I don't fall asleep here.
Bro, I'll do this shit one man again. Mike's already talking about tapping out because he has a cough. If you guys didn't hear that. That was before we pressed play. And now Omar's falling asleep. So we're gonna close this one man show style again.
Well, I was not here last week because I was pretty sick. I had a nasty flu, cold, whatever. Although I tested negative for the flu, but it was not a good time. I'm better now, but it has like evolved and morphed as it does, and now it's just like now it's just a cough that will not go away. I cannot fucking stop coughing, and I hate it. I hope I don't cough too bad on the show. I'll try to toggle my mute button on and off, but I'm here, damn it. I'm here.
Quick sidebar. How long ago was your flu test?
Like a week ago.
Okay. The reason I ask is because like whatever it was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I thought I had the flu, got tested, and they did like a rapid in the place that was negative, and they were like, we're going to send it out for the longer one or whatever. So then I get a result 2 days later that was negative. And I'm like, man, like I wonder what the fuck I have. Because they also did COVID, which was negative. Everything at RSV was negative. All the rapid shit. So I'm like, I feel fucking terrible. Can't wonder what it could be. Anyway, like 5 more days go by. I get better. And I get a call that day. And they're like, hey, I know we called you with the initial rapid and then the 2-day rapid, but the longer test showed that you have the flu. I'm like, oh, well, thanks. I'm better now, but appreciate it. So I never fucking got any meds, nothing.
That
just
sucks, dude.
Nonsense. So don't be surprised if you get a call tomorrow morning that's like, hey, by the way, you do have the flu.
Yeah, right.
But it was literally, I think it was exactly 7 days later. It was absurd.
Well, let's shift gears here. I could say more about my illness and how it went down, but who cares? Who gives a shit? Let's talk about some fights. We're going to talk about all the fights from this past weekend's UFC 298, Volkanovski versus Topuria. We're going to throw a number of these fights into our lightning round, obviously. Then we're going to get the update from Mark of who rose and who fell in his rankings that he maintains, that we affectionately refer to on the show as the Priaulx Rankings. Then we're going to dive headfirst inside the MMA sphere with Omar Artola here. Get the scoop on what's going on in the world of MMA, but outside of the cage. See what I did there? The news, the headlines, the current events, the goings on, the newest fight announcements, etc. And then we're going to look ahead to this coming weekend's PFL / Bellator first mixed card that they have going on there. That will be headlined by Bader versus Ferreira, or Fajita, however you say his name.
That way.
As well as the UFC Fight Night card headlined by, this is a pay-per-view worthy headliner with Moreno versus Royval 2, and the co-main being Ortega versus Yair. Oh my God, what a fight night.
Also two rematches.
Oh, that's also a rematch as well. That's right. That's the one where Ortega popped his shoulder out, or his elbow, shoulder.
Shoulder.
He dislocated his shoulder in that fight.
Yeah.
So this almost feels like their first fight, but just like running it back. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it when we get there. Before we get into any of this fight talk, gentlemen, that is going to take us to the wee hours of the morning because it is so much to talk about. Let us first quickly thank our audience. Hey, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit the like button. All of those things that are easy and free for you, but help us out so much. Our favorite form of audience engagement is down in the comments below. If you hear any of our takes on this show that you agree with, let us know down in the comments. If you disagree with any of our takes, although I don't know how that would be possible because all of our takes are flawless and perfect, but if you do happen to disagree with our takes, we want to hear your takes down in the comments below. Let us know what you think about these upcoming fights, about these results. As always, please keep it classy. If you want audio only, we got you there. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, find us on the socials, all the places at @andnew_MMA show. Okay, let us jump into this episode.
Can I briefly share something before we jump? Sure. I just got an update on my phone that apparently Michael Chandler showed up on Monday Night Raw, WWE Monday Night Raw, and cut a promo calling out Conor McGregor.
Oh my God.
So
what's going on?
Man,
there's that. I'll have to find that.
And I'll tell you why, because spoilers, Ilia Topuria made out a pretty decent fucking call out himself, which is I feel like a little tastier having the belt for Conor, I would imagine. 145 doesn't seem like a great plan, but
I was just gonna say there's no chance.
There's no chance. What a stupid call out.
I'm aware it's not a stupid call out. I mean, he's going to take his shot. He's going to take his shot.
Nah.
Look at Chandler. Chandler at this point
is
he'll stand in Times Square right now and call out Conor McGregor if he thought it would work.
All right, let's save the support. Let's go, Mike. Get us into
it. Okay, I just got it out of the way.
Sorry, I had to share that.
Here we go. Please thank you for sharing that. That's funny. Some funny news. All right, boys. This week, the name on the marquee, of course, it's got to be Ilia Topuria, who this past weekend, Saturday night on February 17th, in the headliner of UFC 298, defeated Alexander the Great Volkanovski, in doing so, taking that UFC featherweight title for himself. Gentlemen, it is pretty much the end of an era. Volkanovski, his long reign as the featherweight king has ended, and it certainly feels like a new era is beginning at featherweight here. Mark, start us off. Give us your impressions of the fight, how you feel that first round played out, and obviously into the second round, how that finish happened. Your thoughts on Topuria's performance, on Volk's performance.
It was unbelievable. It's a night to remember. That's for sure. The image of Topuria standing over Volk like that is a wild one. But it's crazy because initially, as this fight started and was moving through the first like 3 or so minutes, I was worried for Volk because he was purely throwing kicks. It looked like he didn't even want to risk boxing with Topuria. Every time Topuria closed distance, he was kind of touching or just missing Volk. And it looked like Volk was kind of having a hard time angling out every time Ilia tried to cut him off or step in. And I was like, man, he looks like he's going to get caught here. But then for the final 2 minutes or so of round one, that changed. And I thought Volk really started to settle in. He started to look way calmer. His jabs started showing up. He was finding the angles now. He started switching his stances. Ilia started to miss. And I'm like, man, Volk is the man. It looks like he already kind of figured out the movement of Topuria. Like, this may start to turn. And then, the bell, the horn sounds, and you even see a bit of blood dripping down Ilia's nose as he's going back to his corner. And I was like, man, even in an okay round, Volk still did some damage. And it started to have these like Volk vibes that it was going to turn, like I said. And then even for like the first 3.5 minutes of round 2, it was still going pretty well. Volk is moving off center. He's cutting angles to counter. Ilia is just purely stalking it. It seemed like he was firmly set on that being the game plan. And then he finds it. He steps in and under with a right to the body, followed by a left to the head. Both land, and he crowds Volk as Volk's off balance and kind of reaches the fence behind him. And then the cleanest right hand you'll ever see in your life comes over the top, and Volk is just immediately switched off, and it's over. The Volk era is over just like that. And Ilia Topuria is the undefeated, undisputed featherweight champion of the world, has KO'd a GOAT and did it in more or less walk-off fashion. I know he threw one more shot, but it was basically a walk-off. So unbelievable. As I said, to even see Volk get beat like that, and I know Islam did it too, but the circumstances were way different. And also to see that Ilia Topuria is truly this good. His boxing and ability to use everything involved in it as a weapon, and he does use it all as a weapon, from his footwork to the angles he takes as he steps in, to his pressure that is constant, his feints that he had Volk thinking about, and then of course the natural things like the hand speed and the power. It's just a deadly combination of skills for these guys to figure out, and thus far no one has. And the man can grapple on top of it. So it's a big night, and you guys will know what I mean when I say this. Sometimes you see a guy win a belt, and it's like, wow, like that was so amazing that he got to be the champ. But in your head, you're kind of like, there's so many good guys. Like, he may not be the champ for that long. We'll see what happens. Then there are other times you watch a guy become a champ, and it feels like you just watched a coronation and a torch being passed to a new king. And this felt like that.
Absolutely. Omar, did it feel like that for you?
100%. I remember, I think the thing for us, I think we're all kind of at a point now where it's difficult for us to see the changing of the guards sometimes. We love our guys, right? We're fans first and foremost, and we love our guys. And it was always a possibility. And I think we said this last week. Mark said this last week. We talked about it ourselves last week, but
Yes.
Topuria winning was always a possibility. It was never a foregone conclusion that Volkanovski was going to run over Topuria. I thought it would have been a much closer fight. And frankly, the fight was close up until Volkanovski got cracked in the face. And we don't see a lot of punches that clean. I mean, honestly, when it happened, the thing that popped in my head right away was GM3 getting cracked in the face by Khamzat Chimaev. That was kind of the last, like almost a mirror image of that just turned off moment that Volkanovski had, where his body just said enough and he just went out, But it was a very technical fight, and you could see Topuria, just like Mark said, he was stalking him, and he was trying to find his range. He was trying to find the right place to go. And the problem with Topuria is his infighting is disgustingly good. And that comes from how good his boxing is. He's not afraid to come inside against somebody like Alexander, who is a king at infighting, but no one does it with him because of how small he is and how compact he is. Guys are constantly trying to fight him on the outside. Guys are constantly trying to fight at range with him, and he's able to adjust to stuff like that. But Topuria just kept coming forward. You could see the entire fight, Volkanovski was kind of circling, throwing leg kicks, trying to feel everything out, and Topuria was just a statue, just kind of walking him down, moving and cutting angles, making Volkanovski very uncomfortable in there, because people don't do that to Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah.
And you got the feeling, and you don't always get this feeling with guys in fights, but you got the feeling that Topuria was not afraid of Volkanovski. He did not care that Volkanovski had won all these fights in a row. He did not care what Volkanovski brought to the table. Topuria believed in his fight. He believed in his game. He went in there and he executed what he was going to do basically to anybody else that he would have been in the cage with. And that's what makes him terrifying. It was almost like he didn't have to prepare specifically for Volkanovski. He was going to do what he does. And to be fair, that's kind of how Volkanovski made his success as well. It's kind of the same deal. Topuria, we've hyped up for a long time, man. It didn't take very much for his skills and the way that he approaches fights to stand out. The most trouble I think we've really seen him have is against Jai Herbert.
Yeah.
And that was because he went up to 155 to fight that dude who was what, 6 foot tall?
Yeah.
Like he's like 6 foot long. It took him over a round and getting beat on a little bit before finding his range and absolutely turning Jai Herbert off. So no one's escaping Ilia Topuria. I think 145 is going to be a nice little spot for him. And I got to be honest, we're talking about rematches here. Ilia Topuria is talking about, because Volk's nice, even though we should be moving on in the division, we'll give him a rematch. Volk, I think, said rematch like 30 times in his post-fight interview. So I'm assuming we'll probably see that. Volk did defend the belt like 4 or 5 times. So I think it's a little warranted, frankly, but I just, I don't know if he gets caught again because Jesus Christ, but I don't know, man. It was a rough pick the last time, and it's going to be rougher to pick it again.
Mark, who did you take?
I took Volk. I was torn as shit all week, but I mean, in my head, I figured if Topuria won, he'd win by knockout. Totally. I was pretty much debating Topuria knockout or Volk decision, and I went Volk decision.
Yeah, Omar, I agree. I think he really trusted himself, Topuria, and he really trusts his power. I think he knows what he's got, and that is some devastating power.
It's the combinations, though. I mean, anybody can throw a right hand, anybody can throw a jab, anybody can throw a punch with some power, but it's making guys uncomfortable with where they're supposed to be in those exchanges and where they're supposed to put their head in those exchanges that makes things like that successful. And I think the way that he was able to mix it up, and he's, like I said, he's good at infighting. His boxing is I was going to say delicious, but I don't know. That's a little weird. But it is. I mean, his boxing's really good, man. It's really good to see how compact he is as a fighter. His hands are always inside, and he torques his whole body, so he never sacrifices his defense when he goes in for his offense. And not a lot of guys, frankly, do that to the highest level in the striking game out there in MMA. So to watch him do that close distance the way that he did, land to the head, land to the body, land back to the head, I mean, it was... it was fantastic to watch, man. I knew it was going to be a technical battle from the two of them, but to watch Topuria really, really excel and really stand out against, another one of the featherweight greats was a moment, a real moment.
So on the mic in the octagon, I think it was a waste of a call out. Let's turn our attention now to where these gentlemen could go from here. Topuria calls out Conor McGregor. He said, Conor McGregor, something like, if you still have any balls, come fight me, or something like that.
Yeah.
I watching that live. I literally threw my hands up. I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? Conor McGregor walks around at like 200 pounds now. I don't even think he's ever going to fight at 155 again. If he ever fights again. 45? Come on, Topuria. What are we doing?
It didn't surprise me for a couple reasons. One, he has been so vocal about how he's not giving these dudes at featherweight a title shot, which obviously is not going to be up to him, but I'm not giving Yair a shot. I'm not giving Ortega a shot. I'm not giving Max a shot. It's time for a new era, blah, 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 blah. So who was he going to call out? He had to pick a name from somewhere. And then additionally, I've always felt like I haven't heard him say it, but I have imagined that he is kind of inspired by Conor, or at least used to follow Conor, just between the similar chest tattoo, the similar back tattoo, some of the shit he says, the way he grabbed the belt from Volk and held it up just like Conor grabbed the belt from Aldo and held it up. Like the fact that he's filming this documentary about winning the title, there's just a lot of Conor similarities. So I have always assumed that he must be at least somewhat inspired by Conor. So I also wasn't shocked to hear the name since it was already like in my head associated with Topuria. But long story short, I think it was just who would he call out? And he was like, I'll just fucking shoot my shot. And even if it goes nowhere, my name will be in tweets with Conor's name, and that can only be a good thing.
Omar, what do you think of his call out?
First of all, the tattoos are a little odd. I didn't even notice it until somebody made a post about it, and they had them side by side juxtaposed, and I was like, this is a little weird.
Those are very similar, especially the back tattoo.
It was the back tattoo. I feel like if there was no back tattoo, I feel it wouldn't be as weird. But the back tattoo is really fucking weird. But that's neither here nor there. As far as the call out is it is what it is. As far as the call out is concerned, I don't hate it, man. Look, I respect the man trying to get his red panty night, and love Conor McGregor, but that's even at 155, that's a rough night for McGregor. I'm not saying it will
at this point,
but it would be different if like, I don't know, like Brian Ortega was like Conor McGregor, like, let's go. You know what I mean? That seems random as shit. For whatever reason, to me, Ilia Topuria calling out Conor McGregor doesn't seem super random. I can't really maybe explain why, but it doesn't.
I mean, I think it would be a tough fight for Conor. This Conor in 2024. I think 2016 Conor, that would be an incredible fight at 145.
That'd have been fun.
But
it would have been amazing.
Bouncy Conor, karate Conor. That would have been, man.
Wide stance Conor.
Dude, Conor McGregor has been on his heels more in the last 5 years than ever in his entire career.
They walk forward like each other. While we're on this topic, I was actually thinking it when I was watching the fight back. Not that their styles are necessarily similar, but they both walk forward with such a calmness that it's almost like unnerving, and like that they don't care what you're doing because they're just walking and you're going to fall down simply because they're walking toward you. Like, I feel like that's how Topuria fights, and that's how Conor fought in his prime.
Everybody that fights like that generally has a really good understanding of distance. It's because they know where things are, how far things are going to go, and
100%.
They're the ones that make it look the sketchiest, right? They're the ones that make the punches come up right just before it touches their nose, but like that's on purpose. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's those are the game of inches are really played by guys like that. The Ian Garrys of the game, right? The Conor McGregors and things like that. Like you'll see that with those guys. Even the what's his name? Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy's great at that too.
Yeah, man. He made a career on that. So call out aside, let's talk about who Ilia Topuria actually might fight next, because it definitely ain't gonna be Conor McGregor. Mark, what do you think?
I mean, right off the bat, Omar alluded to it. Alexander Volkanovski does deserve a rematch. I know that it feels a little bit odd since we've seen him lose 2 in a row because of the circumstances of going up and challenging Islam, but he won 6 featherweight title fights prior to this. He deserves a rematch. With that said, I would not mind seeing Volk taking some time off and fighting more toward the end of the year. And if that's what Ilia is going to do too, then fine. That's the fight that we make. But if Ilia is going to fight before that, it's going to be really hard for him to not fight one of these guys he says he's never going to fight, because you're going to have the winner of Yair and Ortega sitting right there, whoever that may be. And not to mention, if Max Holloway ever beat Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 and then got on a mic and called out Ilia Topuria, he would have a hell of a claim for that title shot as well, even more than Yair or Ortega would, in my mind, especially considering he's beaten Yair. So I know Ilia is saying he has no interest in fighting these guys, but unless he waits for Volk, and Volk has said he's going to take some time, then I don't see who else he can fight besides one of those dudes.
Yeah. Omar, your thoughts? You think it should be Volk?
Yeah.
Or will be Volk?
I think it should be Volk. I wonder if Volk should take some time off, getting knocked out twice. And this one was obviously worse, I think, than the first one. Against Islam.
Yeah.
And this one turned him all the way off and left the red button right on his face. It's I guess in that respect, it's a tough call. I didn't even really consider him taking a ton of time off, but I think he probably really should. I do think he deserves. Yeah, I think he deserves a rematch. Obviously, though, if we let things happen, who knows what that looks like, right? I think Volk just wants another shot at the belt more than a specific rematch, I would imagine. But like Mark said, featherweight right now is what it is. There's not a lot of room to do crazy things there. So if he's not going to fight in a rematch right away, then he probably does need to fight the winner of either Ortega and Rodriguez, or Holloway if he can put on a performance against Gaethje.
Yeah. He does deserve a title shot, man. He was such a long reigning featherweight champ that, I mean,
And
sometimes
dominant.
I have weird feelings that it has to be this. To be the champ, you have to beat him. You have to beat the champ twice in a row, kind of thing. It almost feels a little unfair to me, but it is what it is.
So
But now,
I
yeah.
I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think a lot of times that's a thing for me when the fights are weird, or like something, somebody gets caught or whatever. But like, this seemed appropriate. This seemed right to me.
Yeah.
As painful as it was as a Volkanovski fan, this seemed like a warranted and well-earned belt, and very much a champion is Topuria. And I haven't always felt that about guys who have won belts. So
Okay. So I guess we don't need to really talk about what could be next for Volk, since that was kind of dovetailed in with what's next for Topuria.
Yeah.
So in the interest of time, because we do have a lot to get to, we probably is a couple more things we could say about Topuria and or Volkanovski, but let's move on, because this pay-per-view itself was pretty stacked with some great fights. So let's go on to the next one. Congrats again to Ilia Topuria, man. What a savage, man. What a fucking savage is that guy. Who the hell is going to beat him? That's the real question. Who the hell is going to beat him? Okay, in the co-main event, UFC 298, once again, it went down at the Honda Center in Anaheim, California. In the middleweight division, Robert Whittaker walks away with the W, defeating Paulo Costa by unanimous decision. The scorecards read 29-28, 29-28, and 30-27, all for the Aussie, the Reaper, Robert Whittaker. Omar, start us off here. Costa was upset. He shared an image on his social media, compared the damage on his face to the damage on Whittaker's face. Do you think he was right to be upset about how this decision played out?
no. I think Whittaker won that fight. I think Whittaker had to go through some shit to win that fight. I think Whittaker is a monster for staying on his feet after eating a spinning wheel kick to the face. But I mean, Whittaker just did more work. You know what I mean? And Costa landing that shot the last 20 seconds of a round that Whittaker had done solid work does not steal him the round. And that was kind of the story of the fight. Whittaker was doing way more work, and it wasn't like pitter-patter stuff. Whittaker was putting in work. Costa spent a lot of time jawing and talking shit and trying to get Whittaker off of his game to do dumb things in the cage. Whittaker didn't oblige and kept to the game plan and made sure that he was doing what he needed to do to not get knocked out, but also put in the work he needed to do against Costa. And I think it worked out for him. And I thought he had all three rounds, as close as they were. I think Costa let that one go. I think Costa had all the tools that it took to beat Robert Whittaker that night. And he just thought, I guess he had thought, because, he had hit Whittaker a few times and Whittaker's face was definitely battered by the end of that round, that fight, that he had done enough. But that's just not how the game is worked. That's not how the game is played.
Mark, your thoughts on the fight and the decision?
I agree. It was a fantastic fight. And I honestly think both guys come out of it looking pretty damn good in different ways. Whittaker, because we saw him completely return to form. Like, there was no fall off. There was nothing missing from the Whittaker, who's been at the top of this division for so long, and people were wondering, obviously, after the Dricus loss. But he's still the same guy, and he showed that in this fight. That period of time in round 2, from the 3-minute mark on, was an absolute masterclass. And for Costa, even though he lost, I also think he put any doubts about how high level he is to bed. Like there were a lot of people who like to doubt Costa online. People who say, oh, he hasn't beaten any ranked fighters and his standing in the division is inflated because of stuff he did years ago and his technique isn't really there. He's just a brawler and stuff like this. He just put on an absolute scrap with Robert Whittaker for 15 minutes and stayed in his face throughout and ate everything that Rob threw at him and even wobbled him in the first round. So I think we can safely say that Paulo Costa is also pretty damn legit. And not to mention, I don't know where the fuck these leg kicks came from, but that dude has some of the fastest kicks I have ever seen in my life. Sorry, I shouldn't say leg kicks. I mean his kicks. Some of the fastest kicks I've ever seen in my life. Like the head kicks he was throwing were coming at it as fast as a jab. I don't remember him ever having that before. It was insane, the speed on his head kicks. But yeah, as for the fight, I agree with Omar. I did score it for Rob, and I think mostly everyone did on the back of rounds 2 and 3. But there's an argument to be made that Rob still won round 1 despite that kick because he was way ahead at that point. And yes, it wobbled him, but he immediately planted his feet, and they exchanged like 2 more shots each. It's not like he was like wobbling and barely staying up. That's not how it went. So I don't know if that's enough to swing that round for Costa. But even if it was, he still lost the fight because round 2, as I said, he started well, Costa, but then it evolved into like a true masterclass for those last 3 minutes. Just the hand speed from Whittaker, the angles, everything was on display. Costa couldn't touch him for a bit there. And then round 3 was closer, but Paulo still got outlanded. So yeah, Whittaker deserved that W. But like I said, it was a great fight from both guys. And I think it was a performance they both needed, I think, in different ways, even though Costa lost it.
On MMA decisions, for what it's worth, all of the media scores, there's about 30 of them. Just a quick count. 2 out of the 30 scored the fight for Costa, 29-28. And everybody else scored it for Whittaker, 29-28. And one person scored it from MMA Mania, 30-27 for Whittaker. So there you have it. Bigger fan scoring, 16% of the fans who submitted scores on MMA decisions scored it for Costa. Wow.
I mean, they're just wrong. Like, I'm not sure what else to say about that.
Yeah. I gotta say though, I love me some Paulo Costa, man. He's such a character in the sport. I love him.
Oh yeah, he looked good. Like I said, he really did.
Yeah, man.
I was watching this the fights with my brother-in-law, and we started talking about Paulo Costa getting a hair transplant, and brought it up because we had recently seen Thiago Alves get a hair transplant. And talk
Dude,
about
they're all getting hair transplants now.
100%. And like, no shade, do what you got to do. You know, Ngannou got one a long time ago. All good. The reason I brought it up though was because I was like, man, Paulo Costa got one a while ago, but like his shit is looking thin.
It looks like he needs another one. I know,
right? Like I didn't want to say that, but like, right though, like it looked like it'd take right. And then I started to.
It too.
I was talking to my brother-in-law because he actually had looked into it at one point. But like, you know, no one here is rich. We can't all fucking do that shit. But apparently the place to do that is Turkey.
Yeah,
that's
I know a guy who just went
to that one place.
To Turkey, yeah.
It's like one
called
place.
It's called like Now Hair Transplant or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But it is one place in Turkey that you go to and you do it and they do it right. Costa got it done in Brazil. So I'm wondering if
dude, I wish
maybe
your
man needs to go
my
to Turkey.
hairline is receding so much.
Mike, you have incredible hair. What the fuck are you talking
John, dude,
about?
look at my hair. It's all the way back here, bro.
Bro, your hair looks like you could host a surfing competition on it. What are you talking about? Look at his hair.
All I'm saying is,
look at all that movement. Look at all that volume.
Steer this ship back into MMA.
I'm talking about. Okay. Sorry. You know, Merab's hair transplant is like fucking fire.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I will say about the hair transplants. The hairlines they do are too straight. It's like looks kind of artificial to me sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
But that's the New York City. That's that crispy edge right there.
You mean this? Literally what I just got today.
But when it's a hair transplant and it's like that's how it's growing in, I don't know. I think it looks kind of weird.
Fair.
Okay.
Probably looks weirder when you have no hair.
Sure. Let's talk about where these guys go from here. Middleweight rankings. Omar, let me start with you this time. Robert Whittaker comes away with the W. He did what he had to do to get the win. He's ranked third currently in the UFC's middleweight rankings, behind Adesanya and Strickland, with Duplessis being the champ, obviously. What could be next for Whittaker?
I feel like you got to give him Sean Strickland at this point, right? If we're not doing Strickland and Duplessis again, which we're not, I feel like that's the fight that makes sense. I feel like that's one of the guys that Strickland hasn't fought yet in the division, which seems wild to have done what he's done without having fought Whittaker. But I think that's what needs to happen at this point. And I think Whittaker is still at a point where his title contention is still very much a reality. But obviously Duplessis put the beats on him already. So he's really got to show up and show out as much as humanly possible in order for him to have a real argument for a second fight against Duplessis, as long as Duplessis is champion.
What a great fight that would be. Mark, do you agree?
I do agree, but I think there's a few ways this could go, just because there's so many good dudes and so much happening at the top of middleweight. Like, they could absolutely make that fight, and it would be great, Whittaker and Strickland. But they could also say Whittaker is going to be the guy to test Chimaev, and that would be amazing. And at the same time, they could make Strickland that guy, in which case Whittaker probably fights like Brendan Allen if he can get past Vittori or something like that. So, like, there's different ways this thing could go depending on really what they decide to do with Chimaev, I think.
Yeah, Brendan Allen is sort of the new kid on the block in the rankings to me, in the top 10.
He's got to beat Vittori. I'm kind of skipping that part, but
that's true.
Are we not even so Chimaev's not even doing anything now until post Ramadan now, right?
Right.
So we're not getting him until like deep into summer at this point, minimum. Probably fall, I would imagine, because
is he not training either during Ramadan?
I don't know how many of them actually train
during it.
Because like, it's one thing to go in and like stay in shape, and it's another thing to like be in camp during Ramadan.
I think he'd fight by like June.
When is Ramadan? Isn't it
March?
I thought it was in June. Oh, is it March? No, fuck.
Am I wrong? Why did I think it was in March?
Ramadan. Oh, it is March. You're right. March 10th to April 9th. Okay. Oh, never mind. I thought it was way down there. Oh, okay. Yeah. June definitely seems feasible then.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Paulo Costa. Where does he go from here, Mark, at middleweight?
I'm going to say Nasruddin Imavov for him. I mentioned it back when Imavov won a few weeks ago that I thought the loser of this fight made a lot of sense, and I will stick with that. I think that's a great fight.
Sticking to it. Yeah, big step up for Imavov if he gets that. Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say the same, actually. I actually think it's a good opportunity for Costa to actually put a stamp that he still deserves to be at the top of that division.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on, gentlemen, to one moment. Let me pull this back up here. Welterweight division, Ian Machado Garry defeats Geoff Neal by a split decision. This one closely contested. The scorecards read 30-27 for Garry, 29-28 for Neal, and 30-27 for Ian Machado Garry. Mark, start us off. How did you score this fight? Who did you have winning on your personal scorecard? And what were your thoughts of the performances of both of these top-tier welterweights?
I scored it for Ian Garry. I was nervous that it was going to go the other way because as much as I thought it was a bit underwhelming from both guys, I think it would have been bullshit if Garry didn't get that dub. So I'm glad he got it. But it was definitely a weird fight and a bit of a disappointing fight. I don't think either guy looked necessarily fantastic. As I said, Ian did clearly win it. You want to give round one to Geoff Neal, you can do that. Round one was extremely close, I thought. I just barely edged it to Geoff myself, both live and on the rewatch. I landed the same way, but it was tight as hell. But there's not an argument for him in round 2 or 3. You know, for the most part, he fell back into one of his old problems, which is inactivity in the fight. He spent too much time following Ian Garry around the octagon, sometimes even with his hands down at his sides. And it's just frustrating. It's got to be frustrating for his coaches, but Geoff Neal seems like a guy who can really be made to look bad by certain opponents, because if he struggles to get inside, he almost shuts himself down. And that's what happened here. It's hard to believe that that's the same guy that we watched pummel Vicente Luque, but he's frustrating like that. And really, I'm not sure what the game plan was, because, like, yes, I get it. Ian Garry moves a lot, and he's great at controlling the range. And I understand that his kicks make him long, especially the teeps that he'll throw and things like that. But you knew all of that was coming before the fight. None of that was a surprise. So it just feels like there should have been a plan B for Geoff Neal and a plan C for Geoff Neal that was ready to go. And there wasn't. He just, once he couldn't get into the range, he just kind of fought a frustrated fight. So all he really had to me was like some clinch time, and then maybe one time per round where he'd have success getting inside the range and would land like 2 or 3 good shots. But aside from that, he was just stuck following Ian Garry around the cage and generally missing. And Garry just used that to pick at him. Like I said, the teeps, he was jabbing him, couple step-in knees per round, and he didn't need much more. And from his perspective, yes, he won, but he also didn't look thrilling. There was a lot of circling from him, to the point that it was almost running at certain times. And that may have been intentional from him. I get it, the power that Geoff Neal has, and you need to make sure you don't get trapped. And, that's the only way, I'm sure, in Ian's mind, that he could lose that fight if he did get trapped. But I just hoped we would see a bit more aggressive offense out of him, especially now training at Shoot the Box. And we didn't. But again, he fought a smart fight and he won it. So it is what it is.
Omar, your thoughts?
I think the real issue I have with performances like this, and I did have an issue with this performance on both sides, like Mark was saying, is the buildup, right? The hype. We had all this buildup, all of this shit talk from Ian Garry, from no, I guess not so much from Geoff Neal, because Geoff Neal doesn't build up anything. But we had all this buildup from Ian Garry, with the shirt from way back when they was first supposed to fight, when that fight fell apart, and all these things happened. And now here we are in the rematch. Or not the rematch, the rebooking. And it was like, and we've seen it before, right? Where guys talk so much shit that neither one of them are willing to lose to each other for ego or whatever reason. And that kind of seemed to be the way that they approached that fight. They high-fived each other 8 times too many. I mean, yeah. I was losing my mind watching that fight, watching them high-five each other. And you guys know me. Of the 3 of us, I'm the more lenient one when it comes to the high fives and all that other extra bullshit that they do in there. I don't mind a high five at the beginning of the round. I don't mind a high five at the end of the round. I don't even mind a high five in the middle of the fight if it's warranted. But like, we can't stop every exchange and be like, you got me. Like, I can't. That's not what I'm here for. You know what I mean? They were basically sparring at one point in there. It wasn't even a fight. So that really drove me crazy. And Geoff Neal approaching that fight like he had done something was another infuriating moment for me. And him with his hands down, doing nothing, and then at the end of the fight, putting his hands up like he had done something. It's moments like that make me think like I'm taking crazy pills. Like I did not watch what I just watched, and we're on a completely different plane of existence. And the reality is this fight was kind of underwhelming on all fronts. I didn't care for it all too much. There's things about the fight that I can appreciate, but with everything that was there, it just felt, in the words of Nick Diaz, it's wolf tickets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. All the high-fiving. It also is opening the door for unsportsmanlike shenanigans that I really hate. That I hate more than the high-fiving. When a guy sucker punches somebody during a high five. Any of those clips we've seen of like the opening seconds of a fight, when a guy offers the opening of a fight like fist bump, and he gets sucker punched, drives me nuts. If I was a promoter, I'd be like, you're never fighting for this promotion ever again. That's fucking bullshit. Anyway, and yeah, high-fiving can lead to that. And too much of it is not a good thing. And also, just fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the people who want to act like Geoff Neal won that fight and that Ian Garry's getting some special treatment because like he's one of their next stars, like those people blow my mind. Like what won the fight based on what?
Yeah,
Even
I mean,
if
it's not
it
wrong.
ended-
He is one of their bigger stars now, and he is a growing star in the promotion for sure.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, is probably why this is, again, even more frustrating than normal because of the expectation of Ian Garry, right? Because of all this hype, again, from him, and because of how big and how quick he's gone, and the other performances that we've seen from him where he's excelled quite tremendously. And in this one where he's talking about knocking out Geoff Neal in round 1, putting him away, all this other bullshit, and what do we get? We got nothing. We got
Right.
Ian Garry on his bike throwing jabs and teeps for a majority of that fight.
Yeah, we had Ian Garry walking around with a Geoff Neal's face on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
right, for that kind of fight where they're just kind of like high-fiving throughout a lot of it and not
All
Yeah,
that
it's
animosity to be fucking best friends for 15 minutes when we need them to not be.
Yep.
Anyhow.
It was weird.
In terms of Ian Garry being a rising star in the sport, he passes the test here, getting past Geoff Neal. Mark, give me the name at welterweight where you think Ian Garry could go next in terms of his next matchup.
I honestly love the Colby Covington call out. I really do. I don't think, as you guys know, I don't think this rumored fight of Colby versus Shavkat is the fight to make. I would rather see Shavkat fight someone like a Sean Brady, like I've said, or even fight the winner of Burns and Jack Della Maddalena, especially if it's JDM, who would be new to the scene as well, like Shavkat is. I just don't think he should be fighting Colby. And I think the Garry Colby fight makes a ton of sense. And it also makes for a really fun dynamic in terms of the lead up, listening to those two trash talk each other. It would be real fun. There'd be good hype on it, good build on it. The people who, other than the people who are true hardcore Colby fans or true hardcore Garry fans, the general public would have to decide who they would want to back in that fight because both of them are pretty damn hated. So that would be a fun dynamic to it as well. And then just the style clash. I love everything about it.
Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, Colby continues and has continued to complain that he has nobody to play the aforementioned WWE game, basically, that is his career. That Leon doesn't play with him, and Usman doesn't play with him, and he's off of all the races on his own, doing his own promotion, you know what I mean, buying the OnlyFans models that don't like him, and wearing the weird costumes. But now he's going to have, if he has Ian Garry, he'll have the perfect dance partner in that regard. And frankly, stylistically, I think it's an interesting fight. I think it begs the question if Colby's game would actually work against Ian Garry. And if Ian Garry can pass the Colby Covington test, I mean, there's some real solidification there.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Yes, he
He's in the
beat Geoff
conversation.
Neal, but obviously, how that went down doesn't provide as much, I don't know, fortitude in that judgment as a win against Colby Covington would.
And it's the wrestler test for Garry, which we are due for.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
a hell of one to start with. Like,
Yeah.
talk about a pop quiz on the first day kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
that's going to be a good one.
Yes.
Dude, you're mentioning the whole pro wrestling angle for Covington. I don't know why. I have never thought of this before right now. Even when he's done with MMA, Colby has an entirely new career for WWE. I mean, that guy would be a mega star and a mega heel over in WWE, and I think he'd be a great fit, to be honest.
It's possible.
I mean, you can imagine him doing his shtick to an arena of wrestling fans, calling them all, what does he say when his videos?
I don't know if he's smooth enough with it.
He's
live.
not. I was literally just going to say that
He has planned
clever
one-liners, but if he was like standing in a ring with millions of people around him and a mic in his hand and he had to talk for 3 minutes, I feel like he'd get awkward.
Dude, you've literally
him.
seen him say something and then immediately be like, I might have fucked up. I might have fucked. You know what I mean? Like in his head, like you see it. You know what I mean? He does it like when Conor buys into the crazy shit.
Conor commits.
Conor's in. Conor's in. When Chael used to get crazy, Chael was in all the way.
No,
You
Chael,
weren't.
no, he was not. Chael's stuff was so canned. Connor
No,
may
but
give
he
you
was,
a little bit.
but like his character, like there was nothing where you were gonna break Chael out of his character, right? Like you could see in Colby the moment, like you would never have Chael be like, "It's just business" at the end of a fight, or like, you know what I mean? Colby is quick to be like, "Hey man, don't worry, I didn't mean about your dad, man. It's just business, man. No worries."
What do you mean
Like
against
that's
I don't
Usman?
know that he ever
against,
said that, to be
Leon.
quite honest.
Connor
He
did.
did.
That
He
against
said
Khabib.
something about it was just business or
To
I was
Leon?
just
No, he
trying
did not.
numbers.
No, dude.
Not during that face off, but at one point I think he did. Yeah.
Allegedly.
Really? Because he stood on it even after the fight about Leon's dad being a bad guy. So I'm surprised if he apologized. I never
Dude,
heard him
that was
say it.
crazy. I can't believe he did that.
Yeah, that was wild. That was fucking wild.
Let's get back on track here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Geoff Neal real quick. Omar, who do you think Geoff Neal could face next at 170 pounds coming off this loss?
I mean, I think it would be interesting to see him fight the loser potentially of maybe Kevin Holland and MVP. That could be a fun one.
Mark,
It's a little bullish for Kevin Holland if he does lose that fight, considering where he's at in the rankings. But I think it would still be a fun fight.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I was actually thinking about that fight, and I was thinking about both the winner or the loser and trying to think in my head what I felt like made more sense. But I actually went a different way. I mean, quick sidebar, it wouldn't shock me if they were like, hey, Geoff Neal, like, that wasn't great. You need to fight Renat Fakhretdinov or like one of these up-and-coming dudes like that. But I think his ranking is high enough that he'll probably get one more fight that's not against like an up-and-coming murderer and will be against someone who's like, you know, similar top 10. So I don't hate Omar's call, but I'll say the loser of Burns and JDM.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, once again, let's move on to the bantamweight division, in which Merab Dvalishvili defeats Henry Cejudo by unanimous decision. All three scorecards read 29-28. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your thoughts of Merab doing what he does yet again to the former champion Cejudo.
I mean, I would even go as far as to say Henry got sunned a little bit in that fight. I mean, you don't really see very many people getting picked up and Matt Hughes to the other side of the cage as much anymore. Like, that's not really that much of a thing. But there Merab was getting it done and slamming Henry down and doing Merab things. I was a little concerned at the beginning of the fight. Merab didn't seem to have the same kind of level of output as I would have expected Merab to have. But I also noticed right away, and I had the question right away before the fight even started, how was Henry going to approach that fight? Was he going to be in his bouncy karate stance and we went back to pre-karate Henry, where his stance was very closed. His arms were very much inside. You didn't really have like that same, you know, open wide stance that he started adopting later on in his career. And I don't know. I mean, you know, there's been talk now of him having trained somewhere else and all this other stuff. I don't really know what the deal was, but it's very possible that he was concerned about the takedowns of Merab. And I think not having his leg all the way out in front as a karate stance was going to keep that from happening as much. And frankly, it didn't really matter, man. Like, credit to Merab for getting not only a takedown, but a few takedowns and solid takedowns and a bit of control at that, a bit of ground and pound at that. You know, when Henry went to recover, Merab was moving with him, and Merab was getting more than one takedown at a time in some regards. Like, he put on a real good performance. Even started jeering at Mark Zuckerberg mid guillotine. I mean, Merab is a showman and an absolute animal, and puts Colby's cardio to shame, and that's saying something. So apparently, I don't know if you guys heard about this. He went 3 5-minute rounds.
Dude, I heard it today.
In the back before this fight. So his warm up was a 3 5-minute round fight with the former bantamweight champion.
Wow, yeah. It's insane. The guy's motor is like nothing else.
Craziest thing I've ever heard of.
It's abnormal.
It really is. Yeah. Great fight for Merab. And, I really appreciated what Dana said in the post-fight presser about how they didn't let Cejudo give another retirement speech with the gloves at the end. Although Dana kind of passed the buck on it and said he didn't have anything to do with it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But then the next thing he said kind of made me feel like maybe he did. How like this was Merab's moment. He's like, Cejudo already retired. And it kind of felt like it was fueled by a little bit of, I don't know, maybe frustration that Dana has felt for Cejudo and his antics. That, when Cejudo's in the spotlight, it is the Cejudo show. And I can't blame him too much for it. The guy has played the game over the past few years and to great effect for his career. And when Cejudo is in the spotlight, it is the Cejudo show. But I agree. It's like, how many times does this guy, whether he wins or he loses, is kind of, I guess, it's about his retirement. But Dana was like, no, he already retired once. This is Merab's night. He beat the former champ, and that's that.
There wouldn't have been any time for him to talk anyway. They let Merab talk for a year. I thought my man was going to run for president out there. But yeah, Merab is unreal. He is so good. And that performance is exactly why I picked him as my most underrated fighter of 2023, because I think people still do not realize just how good this man is. And I saw so many people picking Henry Cejudo in this fight, which goes along with exactly what I'm saying. And it is time to give Merab his respect, because he, as Omar said, he kind of sunned him. And Henry did come out looking great. He took round one here, which he needed to do, because Merab always gets stronger as the fight goes on. And for Henry to get round one in his pocket was pretty big, because it actually gave him a strong chance of winning this. But Merab was just like, yeah, that's cool. I'm going to win all 10 of the rest of these minutes. So enjoy that little moral victory you got there in round one. And he did. He beat Henry everywhere from round two on. He picked up the pace. He was one step ahead in the wrestling. He was outstriking him by a huge margin in terms of strikes landed, which I didn't even realize watching live. Like, I knew he was ahead, but then I saw the numbers afterward, and I was like, what the fuck? He was way ahead. As Omar said, by the end of round two, he's choking Henry while he's talking to Zuckerberg outside the cage. He's like fully comfortable by that point. In round three, he's talking to the commentary, Max Holloway style, while he's like in the clinch. The confidence was through the roof. And for you to be that good, where you're locked in a cage with Henry Cejudo and seemingly don't have a worry about it, is insane. But that's how good he is. And then next thing you know, he is lifting Olympic gold medalist Henry Cejudo up and carrying him across the cage. And I guarantee you, Henry Cejudo would have bet every dollar in his entire life savings that he would never be carried across an octagon by any man. And he was. The self-proclaimed best wrestler the UFC has ever seen, and it's a fair proclamation, was carried across the cage by Merab. The man is undeniable at this point.
And couldn't do anything about it. And not for lack of trying, because there were moments there where Henry was trying to figure out how he was going to get the fuck out of that spot. Couldn't do it. Couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
All right, Mark, you're the matchmaker of the UFC. What do you do next with Merab?
As I just said, undeniable. There is nothing else that can happen with him. He is fighting the winner of Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera. I don't know if Dana's actually said it out loud yet, but he better say it soon, because that man is the number one contender, and he needs to be fighting for a belt the next time we see him in a cage. And if he is not, it is complete bullshit.
Omar, your thoughts?
Yeah, he has to fight for a belt. Aljo's not going back down. There is not going to be a rematch with O'Malley. O'Malley's going to fight Chito. O'Malley hasn't been champion long enough that even if Chito wins, there should be a rematch there. I guess it's always possible something really dumb and crazy happens that might result in some kind of crazy rematch. But as long as things go the appropriate way here, I would expect Merab to be next in line for a title shot.
Let's go, especially now that Aljo's not there.
Yeah.
Aljo's moving up to 45. Yeah, man, I'm happy. Mark, you were so right. You said it, a week or two ago in the text thread, that Merab is like low-key one of the funniest guys in MMA.
Oh, yeah.
So right. He is the man, dude.
He's fantastic.
Okay, let's move on. Let's keep this train rolling along. I was wrong about this one, and boy, am I happy. In the middleweight division, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez gets it done over the dangerous Roman Kopylov by submission, finishing him in very Fluffy Hernandez style. The end comes in the second round, 3:23 of round 2. Omar, start us off. Give us your thoughts. A Fluffy getting a very fluffy victory over such a dangerous middleweight in Kopylov.
I'm gonna tell you right now, the rise of Fluffy as fans, I'm assuming we all are at this point of this man. It's gonna be an emotional journey, friends. This is gonna be an emotional roller coaster because I can tell you right now, that first round gave me zero confidence that fight was gonna go the way that it did. Because Fluffy couldn't find a takedown, couldn't find the range, was trying what he could to get the striking, and Kopylov was doing what Kopylov does, beating Fluffy to the body, which is Fluffy's, apropos named weakness. You know what I mean? That's kind of his doughy center, if you will, and probably the spot that he has the most susceptibility to get hurt. And Kopylov was there. Kopylov was throwing kicks and throwing punches. And that's the dude you don't really want hitting you. That dude looks and it's seemingly verified by Fluffy post-fight that man hits hard as shit. So the first round, I had no confidence that was going to go well. And by the second round, momentum, you could see it shifted. Fluffy was getting gangster with him. Kopylov was getting uncomfortable in there. And Fluffy turned into a full Diaz brother, man, and just went in there and walked him down, just put the pace on him, started to wear on him, and eventually got him, I think it was in the third round, obviously, he got him down and was able to make him lose his base to the point where he took full advantage and then was able to actually work his way into a choke. And the choke was crazy, right? Because you had him at a point where he didn't necessarily have the forearm in, but he kind of had the choke in a situation. He's trying to work it in. And then he kind of fakes that he's going to let the choke go, gets Kopylov kind of to have a false sense of security, and then sinks in the forearm, which was infinitely worse. And that was all she wrote. What a beautiful performance from Fluffy. Like I said, an emotional roller coaster if you're a fan from him, but a great finish and a great overall performance.
Yeah, I feel like it was like a triple attempt on that choke, dude. Yeah. Didn't give up on it. Mark, bringing you in here, give us your thoughts on Fluffy's victory.
I love Anthony Hernandez, man. If you don't love Anthony Hernandez, I think you're watching the wrong sport. As good as he is, and I don't want to pretend he isn't, I think even he would admit his striking technique is a notch below a lot of these guys he fights. And he does not care. He's going to walk forward and make you feel his pressure no matter what. And in most cases, he's eventually going to grab a hold of you and he's going to break you. And it's fucking awesome to watch. And we saw it again here. Like, yes, he was losing round one, but that late pressure against the fence in round one for that last minute and a half was so damn critical, because even though he couldn't get Kopylov down, he made Kopylov work and he made him feel him and feel the relentless work and the pressure against the fence as he searched for ways to get him to take him down. And he made Kopylov's muscles work in different ways, shifting his weight and replanting his feet, trying to defend for that whole minute and a half. And I think that paid off huge, because come round two, that Hernandez pressure was getting to Kopylov much easier. He was not as quick to step back when Hernandez charged in. He wasn't angling out the same way. And then, as we saw, his takedown defense wasn't as strong. His body was already like, fuck, I need a break from this guy. And Hernandez eating shots and laughing will fuck with you mentally, too, in that same way, where you're like, what the fuck? I need to press pause on this fight because this guy is just unfazed. And that's what Anthony Hernandez does. I said last week he would win by drowning. I thought he'd do it by the third, and instead he drowned him by the second. He hunted for that choke. He got it, and that is a big W on a pay-per-view card for Fluffy Hernandez. And another thing, Omar mentioned this, is that we've seen him hurt by body kicks before, and he ate more than one in this fight, and he did eat them. And he even discussed it post-fight, how he's been working on it. So possibly something that he has shored up, which is only going to make him even better. So fantastic fight from him. Great win.
Mark, sticking with you here, off this great win, where do you think he could go from here at middleweight?
So this is another one I said last week, and I'm sticking with it. I think it's perfect. I would like to see him fight Jack Hermanson. I think that's a fantastic fight. It's a fight that I think truly gets the winner a shot against the upper echelon of middleweight, where I think neither of them are at quite yet. And I think that's the perfect way to get there. And I would love to see how they match up really in all departments, but especially the pace.
Omar, do you have any other thoughts?
If not Hermanson, then I would go Roman Delites. Kind of in the same vein, same reasons. I think stylistically that one's a little bit more chaotic, and I think I would enjoy that one just a little bit more on paper anyway, but both are solid fights.
Like it. Mark, anything you want to add in about Kopylov?
Yeah. He's 4-3 in the UFC now, and as good as he's looked in his wins, he has lost to anyone who has even considered the idea of grappling with him. So he's going to have to show that he can beat a wrestler. So we'll go down the line a little bit from Anthony Hernandez, but I'm going to say whoever loses this upcoming Andre Petrosky and Jacob Malkoun fight, considering they're both pure wrestlers pretty much, would be a good test for Kopylov, and one that he's going to need to show he can pass if he's really going to matter at middleweight.
Omar, any thoughts on that?
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm trying to pull this shit up. Whenever we get outside the top 15, your boy has to go to this website. I think for me, one of the interesting fights here that would be fun would be a fight with Jungwon Park. I think both of these guys sling hammers. Jungwon Park is also a guy that slings some hammers. Put him in there. See who dies.
Okay, moving on. One more recap, boys, before we hop into our lightning round. Let's keep it going. The feature bout on the prelims that went down on ESPN and ESPN Plus for UFC 298. In the women's strawweight division, Amanda Lemos gets the victory over Mackenzie Dern. The decision was a unanimous one. All three judges had it 29-28 for Lemos. Omar, start us off. Give us your thoughts.
I struggle, man. I didn't. No one expects Mackenzie Dern to outstrike Amanda Lemos, right? Like that's not the game plan, and I think we were all on the same page. But like, we saw the work that she did on the ground, and she was doing good work up to a certain point. There were definitely big moments for Mackenzie Dern, hitting reversals and things like that in the fight, and showing a real. I thought of real aptitude on the ground over Lemos. Lemos was good in her defense, obviously, but you could tell that Lemos wasn't going to, find a submission or anything like that, right? It was purely defensive for the most part. She got some shots off when she did end up getting on top in certain exchanges. But I struggle with Mackenzie Dern because like she looks worse, right? Am I crazy? She looks worse striking in the last two fights than she did prior. So I recently heard that she's no longer with Priaulx.
Yeah.
Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
I would assume it has a lot to do with it. But like, how do you go backwards? Like, I get not getting better. How are you going backwards?
Not to interrupt, I also think it's that she has fought two power punchers in a row. And prior to that, she was fighting girls who weren't quite as much killers. So she was getting hit, but the impact wasn't the same. And now you're seeing it even worse.
I guess. I don't know, man. I really struggle with her and trying to gauge where she's at and where she's going. Because to be honest, it's like I'm getting like Michelle Waterson vibes here, right? Where she's gonna be big name, people are gonna know who she is. She's gonna fight on good cards and kind of be in the mix for the most part, but we're never gonna get to the point where she's really fighting for a belt or even really contending for a belt. You know what I mean? She's just gonna be a staple in her division. And I don't know, man. I thought she would go farther than that. But the progression, especially in the hands and in the takedowns, it's just not there.
Yeah,
man.
Fair.
Okay, Mark, your thoughts?
I was glad this fight got scored for Amanda Lemos. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I certainly felt like she won that fight. Round one was definitely a close round, but personally I think she was ahead enough from the striking and the early damage to the calf that Mackenzie didn't surpass her with that groundwork. She mostly spent the time on the ground just trying to move to mount, which Lemos defended pretty well. And maybe Mackenzie could have stolen that round one if she tried to score a bit more, but it was really all her trying to pass. So I think it was the right call that Lemos got round one and therefore won the fight. Granted, I also thought round 2 was a 10-8 for Lemos, which none of the judges gave. So I was surprised by that. But yeah, round 2 was dominant. She ripped the leg some more. She was wrecking Mackenzie on the feet, had her basically running away at one point. She dropped her 2 different times and then had Mackenzie turtled up. So to me, that's a 10-8. I'll even go as far as saying that Lemos got robbed of a finish in that fight. Mackenzie Dern hit the ground for the second time in that round at 3:54 on the clock. The way she fell, the way she covered up, barely moving, then she rolls over and turtles up. About 8, 9, 10 more punches land. And at 3:45, Dern reaches for an arm. You do not get to quit fighting for 9 seconds and then keep going when your wits come back a little bit. So I thought that was bullshit. I thought that should have been a TKO victory for Amanda Lemos. I don't know what exactly Mike Beltran was thinking there. But with that all said, you got to give Mackenzie Dern her credit because she's an absolute dog. And to survive all of that, get yourself back into the fight, and then win round 3 is wild. And it's a hell of a statement about what's inside of Mackenzie. So she has the heart to be elite for damn sure. Unfortunately, until that striking defense levels up, and the striking offense, I guess, as well, but primarily the defense, she is going to continue to be turned back by the upper echelon of this division. And she had her chances in round 3 to pull a W out of the fire. There were a couple moments where I was like, holy fuck, is she actually going to get something right now? And if you ever told me that Lemos would end up having to grapple that much, I would never have picked her in the fight. So she's improved her grappling from some of the earlier moments we've seen in her career because she did pretty well defensively. And she earned that win. Maybe not the TKO that I think she deserved, but at least she got a W.
That being said, Mark, you picked Lemos to win this fight. You were the only one out of the 3 of us, I think. So you get the Tootsie Roll on this one. Now tell us, where do you think Lemos can go off defeating maybe one of the brighter stars in the division?
So she was originally booked to fight Tatiana Suarez for this card. Suarez hurt her knee and pulled out, and that's when Mackenzie stepped in. And I honestly don't think there's another option that makes much more sense than that. Supposedly this injury to Tatiana is a short-term one. We can only hope because she's had plenty of long-term ones. But supposedly this is a short-term. I don't think she will walk right back into a title shot. I think she'll need to get another win. And I think Lemos is the person who makes the most sense for that fight.
Omar, your thoughts?
I still like the Tatiana Suarez one. Who's Tatiana Suarez up against next?
Lemos, but she got hurt.
No, but isn't she? Oh,
This was her fight.
She's not
Mackenzie
booked again, though, right?
Her.
They didn't rebook her against anybody?
No.
Yeah, I still like that fight, man. I still like that fight. I'm going to stick with that.
Okay. Let's talk about Mackenzie Dern. Truly one of the darlings of the sport, especially on the women's side. Omar, if you were the matchmaker, who would you match her up with next?
I'm actually going to see what this... 2 seconds here, because we have a name here that I'm curious about. I don't know if she's fighting, and she's not. It's a little... maybe I'm a kind of an asshole in this sense here, but I think you can give her somebody like a Lupi or even a Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and really see where Mackenzie Dern is at, because now I'm made of questions again about her. So yep. I think that's those are women who are decent tests that I think their striking should be relatively on par with Mackenzie Dern to kind of see where she's at and, hopefully answer a couple questions there.
I like the Kowalkiewicz, somebody who has nice striking, but not somebody who is going to put Dern's lights out. And it's a nice test. Mark, your thoughts?
So Lupi's fighting John Jadoba, but I do like the Kowalkiewicz one, and I had it noted here myself. See, Mackenzie's hard because she's beaten most of the girls below her, but just can't break through against anyone above her. So I guess my favorite would be, I don't know how soon Tisha Torres is returning. That's my favorite option because their first fight I thought was so razor close, and I would love to see it get, a more definitive winner. But I'm not sure what her deal is truly, so I myself had that I would go with either Kowalkiewicz if we want to further test the striking, or maybe we give Mackenzie a grappler's delight and put her in there with Jillian Robertson.
Oh, that's a good fight, actually. Yeah, that's a good fight.
That I would go as far as to say that could be like maybe if Dern was coming off a win, it would be like a fight night headliner, because that would be, especially for the purists. Although Dern does have probably quite a bit of appeal for casuals, but for the purists who know what they're watching, you know what I'm saying? That would just be like you said, grappler's delight. Emphasis on delight, man, because the skill that those two would be bringing in.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, man. It'd be like watching a what's it called, a ADCC or a fight or an EBI fight, but in an MMA context. That'd be really cool to see. Okay, let's jump into our lightning round. Finally, here we go. Mark and Omar, give me your lightningest takes. Okay. Heavyweight division, Marcos Rogerio de Lima defeats Junior Taffa, who stepped in for his brother Justin Taffa on short notice. De Lima gets it done by TKO via leg kick and punches in the second round. Omar, go first.
Yeah, these are leg kicks from hell. That man is too big to be throwing leg kicks like that at people. Felt bad for Taffa, man. That's, a gangster move stepping in the way that he did on short notice. But I'm sure the limp will remind him to potentially make better decisions down the line.
Mark.
I was pretty surprised to see how aggressive De Lima came out in the striking after the damage that he took to his mouth last fight. I really was so sure that he would look to take this to the ground, especially because against either Taffa, you would think that's where he was going to have a big advantage. But he was on gas from jump. He started ripping the calf. It added up very quickly. Then he oddly decided to take Taffa down. And I get it that like at heart, he's a grappler and maybe that's where his mind went. But the whole world knew that was the wrong call. And then, of course, as soon as round 2 starts and they're standing again, one more calf kick and the fight's over. Yeah. So props to Junior for stepping up, of course. But yeah, pretty dominant from De Lima.
Okay, bantamweight division. Rinya Nakamura defeats Carlos Vera by UD 30-27 on all 3 cards. Mark, take it.
Not the most thrilling fight, which was a bit unexpected considering what we've seen from Nakamura to this point. But Vera had a game plan and he stuck to it. Maybe even more so because apparently he injured his shoulder early on, so I guess he didn't want to throw strikes if he didn't have to. I was a bit surprised by Nakamura that he didn't try more to separate and force Vera to strike. Like I get it that Nakamura is a great wrestler and grappler himself, and we saw that he did a great job staying safe and controlling the fight, but it just felt like he could separate and really lean on a striking advantage that he certainly would have had, and he just chose not to do it. So who knows, but nice win.
Yeah, man. Omar.
So everybody apparently was fucked up in this fight. Rinya apparently broke his hand in the first round, which...
Oh, that's right. I forgot he did say that.
Yeah, he broke his hand in the first round, which apparently caused him not to look as great, I'm assuming, as we were expecting him to. And Carlos Vera, screwed his shoulder up at some point in the first round. So we were watching essentially 2 handicapped men fight for 15 minutes. And it looked like that. It was a rough fight. Grappling was decent enough where, we saw Rinya be able to kind of flow and against a very good grappler. I will give Vera that. You could see definitely positionally he knew what he was doing and where he wanted to go and was defensively sound relatively. But I think the one thing that you could say, that anybody could say after watching that fight was, I just wanted more. Whatever that means, I just wanted more of it.
Okay. Light heavyweight division, Zhang Minyang defeats Brenson Ribeiro by knockout, 141 of round 1. Omar, take it.
Yeah, so as slow pace and potentially uneventful as the previous fight that we talked about was, this is the exact opposite. This man went in there and put the beats on Brenson Ribeiro, took a shot or two himself before he did, but man, he went in there, put on a statement, and then called out Alex Pereira. It was a moment. It was a moment for sure.
Mark?
Yeah. Yeah, I figured this one was going to be a car crash going in, and God, was it ever. I mean, they went at it. It was honestly Ribeiro who was looking the better of the two early on. He kind of had Ming Yang stuck on the end of his punches, but holy fuck, that combo from Ming Yang, excuse me, I believe it was, to finish left hand, right hand, left hook, all landed clean as hell, and Ribeiro was done. So that's a big time debut.
Okay. Now on the early prelims, let's see. In the welterweight division, Danny Barlow defeats Josh Quinlan by TKO, 118 of round 3. Mark, go.
Barlow looks to be the real deal, man. He came in with some hype. People were excited to see him, and he showed out. He was longer, quicker. For most of the fight, he seemed content to just kind of pick away at Quinlan, and it seemed like maybe we were going to be coasting our way towards a clear decision. And then he really poured it on in round 3 and got himself a big stoppage. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's got going forward because there is some talent there for sure.
Omar.
Yeah, I got to say, man, I was lulled by Barlow's approach to that fight. It was very measured, very picky in the very beginning, and it almost slowly picked up a little bit as the fight progressed, and kind of found myself, thinking, I thought he'd be doing more, but like not realizing how much he had actually already done up until that point. And then once we got into the third round, Quinlan was like, I've lost this fight. I've got nothing else I can really do to win this fight other than just get crazy and see what happens. And he did that without keeping his hands up. And Barlow made him pay for it and absolutely laid out Quinlan. And, to Quinlan's credit, he tried to survive as much as he could, man. But Barlow was on that ass from the moment that sequence started. So it was a good performance. I'm interested to see what he can do at a higher level here. But it was a great performance.
Okay. Mark, did you go?
Yep.
Welterweight division, Oban Elliott defeats Val Woodburn by UD. Omar, go.
This was an interesting fight too, man. Elliott seemed like he had very much the approach that he was the better fighter, that that he wasn't going to muscle his way through this fight, that he was going to use technique to go through this fight. And Woodburn had the opposite objective. Woodburn was going to try and juggernaut his way through that fight and try to land hands on Elliott as much as he could. I think he really believed that if he could put one solid punch on Elliott's chin, that he could put Elliott out. And it was a gamble that he lost, and really not the best way to approach a fight. I think we've seen multiple times that when guys headhunt and do these kind of wild, overreaching, overcocking styles, that guys like Elliott, who can play on the outside and have good footwork and good distance management, it just doesn't work as well, And Elliott got tagged every now and again, nothing too flush, but it was Elliott's world in there, and he put on a good performance.
Mark.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just not sure Woodburn had another way to play it. I'm not trying to knock the guy, but he is only here because he took that Bo Nickel fight on not even 24 hours notice or whatever it was. I'm not sure that he necessarily belongs in the UFC, and I'm not sure what other route he had over Elliott besides just trying to kind of clip him early. But yeah, it didn't work. He had nothing off his back where he spent most of that fight, and Oban Elliott got not the most thrilling debut victory, but it was pretty clear and dominant for him, so I'm sure he will take it.
Okay, last one, boys. Women's featherweight division, Miranda Maverick gets it done, getting the UD over Andrea Lee. Mark, go first.
Yeah, this one I got wrong. I took the shot on Lee as the underdog here. I said last week in my breakdown that it hinged on getting aggressive Andrea Lee, and that occasionally we don't get aggressive Andrea Lee. And we didn't. I don't get it. When she goes on the feet, she is a nasty Muay Thai striker that can cause problems for a lot of girls. And then she has these fights like this where she just kind of is like, I'll point fight. I'll kind of watch what's happening. And she can't win those fights. I don't think she's ever won a fight in that fashion in the UFC. So she let Miranda dictate. And if you let Miranda dictate, that fight was always going to go Miranda's way. And that's exactly what it did. So big win for her. She has now worked her way back up. Obviously, she kind of had her rise and then a bit of a fall, and now she's risen again. So good for Miranda Maverick. I'm sure she will be ranked come tomorrow when they come out. And I'm sure she'll have a pretty big fight coming up.
Omar, take us home.
Maverick looked great, man. I think the one thing that I really love watching her do when she fights is the entries on her takedown, the timing, the level change, the shot itself. I mean, she has some really good technique on those entries. Apart from that, though, I think Andrew Lee was fighting the way a person fights when they are concerned about getting taken down to the ground. And especially with somebody who can strike the way that she does, who relies on kicks the way that she does, I think that there was a bit of a concern about her getting taken down, and it made her uncomfortable. And we saw the results of how the stand-up game worked or didn't work, and then the subsequent following up process down to the ground. I think Miranda was just a better fighter. I think her comfort level and seemingly the evolution in her comfort to her game has been fantastic to watch. You can see she hesitates a lot less. You can see she pushes throughout the fight. You could argue she lost that last round. I gave Miranda all 3 rounds personally. But I thought it was a fantastic fight for Miranda either way. I thought she had already done enough work by the 3rd round anyway. So I didn't think it really mattered either way you cut it, but hell of a fight for Miranda Maverick. And this is the Maverick that I thought, we should be seeing on a consistent basis.
And that does it, boys, for this week inside the MMA sphere. The lightning round.
Close enough.
That was a lot of recapping.
I'm losing it. That being said, let's put a bow on this one. Mark, tell us who rose and who fell in your rankings.
All right, we are going I was going to say double time. That's not right. We're doing 2 rankings is what I'm trying to say here, because somehow I did a show by myself last week and I didn't give you guys my own segment. So we are going to catch up first on the movement from the February 10th card quickly. Which was a fair amount, if you can recall that card after everything you've already seen this weekend. But 4 risers, I'll just go through these quickly. Gregory Rodriguez moved up from number 31 to number 24 in my middleweight ranks. Adolfo Vieira with a big jump from number 43 to 23 in my middleweight ranks. Carlos Prates debuted and is already up at my number 39 ranked welterweight after beating Trevin Giles. And Marcin Prokhnio went from number 31 to number 25 at light heavyweight on the back of his win over Devin Clark. The 2 fallers were Brad Tavares from 22 to 26 at middleweight and Devin Clark from 20 down to 27 at light heavyweight. He is going the wrong direction of late. So that's the quick catch up on what was missed last week. And then this week is very quick. Only 3 real significant movers, and none were fallers. So I just got 3 risers for you guys coming off of UFC 298. The first is Miranda Maverick. She had crept up in my rankings to being just outside that top 15 again. I had her at 17 coming into this fight, and I now have her up at number 12. So that's a nice win for her. Danny Barlow, who we just discussed, was a debuting fighter, and I've already inserted him at number 51 in the welterweight ranks, and there's like 80 fucking welterweights, so not a bad place for him to start. And then the man, Ilia Topuria, was my number 4 featherweight, and he is now, of course, the featherweight champ.
Boom.
And that's it.
All right. Omar, moving things right along inside the MMA sphere. Tell us, unmute your microphone and give us the news.
Well, we've got a lot to get to. So I've got a few fight announcements, and we're just going to keep the ball rolling now. So we're going to start right at the top here with Umar Nurmagomedov back in the mix. He will be fighting Bekzat Almakan. Let's try that one more time. Bekzat Almakan.
Umar Nurmagomedov,
Yes.
as in the ranked bantamweight,
is fighting a random. Correct.
What?
I'm going to text you the name, and you
His
can
last
do your Googles.
booking was Corey Sandhagen that he fell out of.
Well,
now he's fighting a debuting fighter.
He's fighting the great Alma Khan.
I mean, maybe this dude is like nice and it's a big debut. I don't even recognize that name though. But like, what? Why? What is the logic?
I have no idea. But this fight has been added to the Vegas card on March 2nd. We'll see how that goes.
I need to look this guy up. Please hold on. Beksat Almakan, 14-1. Yeah, dude, I don't know this dude at all. I mean, 14-1, but like that's a weird fucking booking. All right, carry on.
Next, we have Philippe Lins versus Ion Kutelaba. That fight has been added to UFC's 299 card on March 9th. We also have Dusko Todorovic. He's out. Doesn't matter. And we have Edmund Shahabazian. He's now facing AJ Dobson. That fight's going down to UFC Vegas on March 23rd. We have Bill Algeo fighting Kyle Nelson. That fight's been added to the Atlantic City card on March 30th. And with Sean Brady out, Vicente Luque will now be facing Joaquin Buckley at that UFC Atlantic City card. Huge spot for Buckley, again, going down March 30th.
I forgot Buckley stepped in on that. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. And we finally got, after long and bated breath, the main event of UFC 300, and it is Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. That will be headlining UFC 300 on April 13th.
Yay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Mark?
I mean, I think it's a great fight. It's an awesome fight. But it's just not, I think, what we had envisioned the UFC 300 main event being. It just, I think we all thought it would come with some more name value or some more story behind it. And this one is just, yeah, that's a great fight. But it's not, any other pay-per-view, sure. But UFC 300, I just think my expectations were a bit higher.
Yeah, the only thing I think that's wrong with this pay-per-view, given that it's 300 and it's such a milestone, is the main event. Otherwise, the whole card is crazy stacked.
Yeah.
Crazy
if it was this
stacked.
exact card, but it had one additional fight on it at the top that was like, whatever the fuck would make sense. I mean, like, I don't want to just use Conor as an example, but like something with like a legendary name, then it would be like, yeah, boom, UFC 300, they did it. Good job.
And that's really the thing, right? Is like we were told, and we were kind of sold this, right? Like no one, like Dana hyped this shit up to the level that it's hyped up. He did this to himself, right? Yeah. He made it seem like this card was going to be the most legendary card to date, right? It's going to put 200 to shame, which the bar is not that high for 200 in the first place. It's going to put 100 to shame, which the bar is a little bit higher for 100. 100 was pretty badass. But I think we got to a point in 300 where things just went left, right? John Jones was not going to fight, right? John Jones fucked him.
There you go. That's an example. That's a perfect one. If they could have had Jones and Stipe as the main event, it would have felt like, okay, that's a 300-y main event. Yeah,
you needed an event. You needed something that had that gravitas to it. And a regular title fight with no... Like, you could have put Leon Edwards in there with somebody else and it would have had the same effect that this fight has right now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I guess the argument could be made Alex Pereira, I guess, is probably more popular or something like that. But, like, it just doesn't carry any kind of weight the way some of the other ones were. And we even got to the point where we were expecting some crazy dumb fight. You know what I mean? Some fight out of left field, GSP versus, like, Nick Diaz or something. You know what I mean? Like, everybody was expecting something out of left field, and we got the most straightforward,
normal,
uncreative fight.
That we all knew we were getting already, just weren't sure when it was going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the state that the promotion is in, there is a very, very small, not even handful of names that they probably really wanted in that main event spot.
But see, they just didn't book well. Like, they could have had Sean O'Malley on that card as the main event, and I think it would feel even bigger than Pereira and Hill does. Like, there were other options that they just threw onto other cards when they didn't have to.
299 is arguably better than 300.
I agree.
And like, that's not the point. You know what I mean? That's not the point of UFC 300. UFC 300 should be, without a doubt, the best card of the year, essentially. Like, that's what they've been touting for the last year leading up to this. And it's not what it was meant to be.
It should be the best card of all time in theory.
Yeah.
It should be the biggest card of all time. It is. I think it does have the argument of being one of the most stacked cards, top to bottom, of all time. But it's just that main event, man. It's just that main event. This is that marquee.
I do like 299 better, personally. I really do.
Who's the main event? 299.
O'Malley.
Cheeto.
And Cheeto.
But it's stupid stacked, just like this one is. 299 here. Ready? 299 is O'Malley, Cheeto, Poirier, Saint-Denis, Burns and Della Maddalena, Jan and Song, Holland and MVP, Munoz and Kyler Phillips, Chukagi and Macy Barber, Curtis Blades, Halton Almeida, Gamrot and Dos Anjos, Pereira and Ilashayjuk, and then there's a couple randoms. But like that's like the eighth fight I just said was Dos Anjos and Gamrot. Like that card is crazy stacked.
Yeah, that's a great fight.
There are, I think, fights that really would have fit the bill are fights like, I'm just gonna like spitball, Conor Poirier 5 or whatever it would be. I think it would have been a huge fight because both names. Even a fight like,
dude, they could have put Conor Nate as the UFC 300 main event, and people would have been like, all right, fucking down.
Yes. Right. Because both names. See, even a fight like O'Malley, Cheeto, O'Malley is a megastar. Cheeto, we all love him. But does Cheeto deserve to be a headliner on 300? I don't know.
No, you're right.
Jones Stipe is a matchup where both guys deserve to be there. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. There's only a small handful of matchups that really, really should have been there.
Yeah.
They didn't get any of them. Nope. We got two guys that we all love to watch in Pereira and Hill.
Islam getting hurt them, because I think we would have got potentially Islam Gaethje, which would have worked, or even Islam Leon, which would have been enormous.
That would have been huge. The stakes of that would have been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still going to be a main event that I'm going to watch the shit out of. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. It'll be good.
With bated breath.
All right, let's keep going. We have so much to do still.
Oh shit, I forgot it was me. Next on the list we have Anshul Jubli is out against his fight with Mahashatse. Mahashatse would now be facing Gabriel Benitez, my boy, back in the mix. That fight will be going down April 27th. Joanderson Britu versus Jack Shore has been added to UFC's 3-1 card on May 4th. And last but not least, Terrence McKinney will be fighting Esteban Ribovic. That is going down May 11th.
That's good too.
May 11th seems like a really far date for that.
Yeah, it is.
But there it is.
Well, I mean, I guess that's only 3 months from now.
Yeah, but he's like fighting every other week.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
That's all we got for you this week, though. Let's get into the weekend.
The weekend. Okay. Let's talk about this shit.
Who are you, Jason Statham?
Let's talk about this shit. Okay, let us first go to PFL Bellator. The first event with this PFL Bellator merger / acquisition going down February 24th. This is it Friday or Saturday?
Saturday.
Saturday. Very interesting. This is actually happening. This is crazy. Really, it really is. We were commenting earlier in 2023 about how, PFL and Bellator, they're of like there were like four big promotions, the UFC, Bellator, PFL in one. But these planets are colliding, and PFL acquired Bellator. And now PFL is going to use Bellator as like their, what did the guy call it? The CEO of PFL was like, Bellator is going to be their premium championship, Champions League or something like that. The one-off shows, he called it. The Super Fight Series.
Yeah,
So
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, and PFL is going to continue to be their league format, their season format. So here we go. PFL versus Bellator. That is the name of the event, I believe.
Champs. PFL versus Bellator. Champs.
Yes. And I love their little sub line is seize the throne.
Yes.
And it is being headlined by Renan Ferreira and Ryan Bader, the PFL heavyweight champ and the Bellator heavyweight champ, duking it up. Duking. What am I trying to say?
They're duking it.
They're duking it out. That's it. We're going to talk about a handful of these fights, gents. Any that you really want to spotlight before we jump into it?
Clarissa Shields is on this card, which
that's right.
I don't think we're getting into her.
Yeah.
This is an MMA fight for Clarissa Shields, for those of you who are wondering. Yep. And she's going to be fighting a girl named Kelsey DeSantis.
Yeah, girl she's fighting is 1-2, it appears. So I think they're trying to get Shields back on the winning track in MMA after the last performance. But we'll see how that goes. Yeah. But yeah, that's the only undercard that I feel like is really worth highlighting necessarily. I guess before we hop into these previews, just as an overall, I want to give PFL management a lot of credit because outside of the title fights, which are what they are, they could have picked some matchups that favored the PFL and got their boys off looking good. And instead they looked at the Bellator roster for the rest of these fights and chose Vadim Nemkov, Yoel Romero, AJ McKee, and Aaron Pico. I mean, you can't pick scarier dudes than that. So props to them for being willing to put it on the line, and props to them for making a great card. Like, yes, they only have 3 title fights on here. They lost the Pitbull Pinedo fight, unfortunately. They couldn't make Pacheco Cyborg, which I know they had wanted to. And they even lost Magomed Karamov from one of the title fights we do have. He was supposed to be fighting Jason Jackson, obviously, and now we have Ray Cooper stepping in instead. But to find 4 other fights here of Kapelos and Nemkov, Santos Romero, Collard McKee, and Braga Pico, that is a hell of a quartet of fights. They really went all out and tried to put on a great card here. So I give them credit.
Yeah, man. Let's jump in with the first fight that we're going to discuss, that being Aaron Pico taking on Henry Corral. How did he say his last name? Corrales?
Aaron Pico? Braga. He's fighting Gabriel Braga.
What am I looking at? What the fuck? Well, this is wrong.
What?
On Wikipedia has it wrong.
Dude, don't tell me Braga pulled out or some shit.
Unless Wikipedia knows something.
It's still Braga on Sherdog.
Yeah, it's still Braga where I'm looking to.
Sherdog, yep. Well, let's just cue this up as though it's going to be Braga then.
Yeah.
Let me just scan this real quick. Why would they have this other guy there?
Yeah, everywhere I'm looking still says Braga.
Okay. Aaron Pico. From the Bellator side of things, is 27 years old, still fighting out of Whittaker, California, 12-4 as a pro with 10 finishes. 8 of those are knockouts, coming off back-to-back wins, most recently defeating Pedro Carvalho back in September by TKO. He'll be taking on Gabriel Braga, the 25-year-old out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 12-1 as a pro with 5 knockouts to his name. Looking to get back in the win column after losing in the PFL finals against Jesus Pinedo back in November this year. Mark, start it off. Give us your take and your pick.
All right, Pico is minus 300 as the favorite, so pretty wide. And Gabriel Braga is plus 250. Braga will be 1 inch taller. He has a 1.5 inch reach on Aaron Pico. And he can be tricky for a lot of guys to deal with. We've seen that, but I don't think he's going to be tricky for Aaron Pico. We've seen Braga be taken down. Chris Wade had some success there. We've seen Braga struggle a bit when his opponents force the aggression in the striking and pressure him. Think about Pinedo in the last fight. Think about Pinedo even in the end of the first fight where Braga did beat him on the cards. And Aaron Pico is fully equipped to do both of those things. And on top of that, the one knock left on Aaron Pico has, because he's really begun to button up his whole MMA game. The one knock has been that he's still a little bit hittable, but Gabriel Braga is not really a huge knockout threat. So I just don't see him finding a way to win this fight. I think Pico's going to put on a great performance. I think he's finally at the point in his career where he's showing that the early hype was justified. I debated whether I want to go finisher decision, but I think I'm going to trust the durability we've seen from Braga, and I will take Pico to win a UD.
Omar?
Yeah, I've been enjoying the way that Pico has been growing and progressing in his career. He's just been getting better with each fight, looks stronger with each fight, looks more confident, more fluid. Combos are really getting together really nicely. So I probably won't be picking against Pico anytime soon. So unlike Mark, I do think that he finishes Braga here. I think it'll happen a little bit later on in the fight. I don't think it happens early. But I do think it'll probably be a little bit of a melting. So I'm going to go with round 3 TKO.
I'm going Pico with this one, boys. I think he is budding superstar and really coming into his own as one of the great featherweights in the sport overall. Give me Pico by knockout round 2.
Nice.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Man, these fights are all great. Clay Collard versus AJ McKee. Here we go. Clay Collard representing the PFL side of things. 30-year-old out of Price, Utah. 24-11 with 1 no contest. 14 wins by finish. 11 of those being knockouts. Most recently, losing in the final against OAM for the PFL 2023 season. AJ McKee, the mercenary, the 28-year-old, man, he's still so young, out of Long Beach, California. His record stands at a very impressive 21-1 with 13 finishes, 6 knockouts, and 7 submissions, riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Omar, start this one off. Give us your take and your pick of Clay Cassius Collard taking on AJ Mercenary McKee.
I think we've seen 2 things consistently from both guys. Clay Collard is a motherfucker. He is the dude that will not stop. He will go forward short of you putting him out. May not always be the most technical, the cleanest, maybe even the most visually appealing when it comes to, the way he strikes and the way he approaches the fight, but he's effective. And he's very good at implementing his game plan to get people to drown, to get people very uncomfortable in their positions, moving back and things of that nature. So I think he's definitely got skills, and he definitely has a great approach to the game with people that it works with, or against, I should say. AJ McKee's not that dude. AJ McKee is a very technical fighter. That's not going to be his first rodeo. I don't think that's how I think he's on a different level than what Clay Collard is on right now. So I'm going to go with AJ McKee here by decision.
Mark.
All right, McKee is minus 265. Clay is plus 215. 1 inch of height for Clay, but a half inch of reach for McKee. This is a really fun fight. One of the best that I think PFL Bellator could have made here. So I give them props for that. If we're being honest with ourselves, as much as we all loved the rise of AJ McKee and had these conversations of how he would do against the Volks and the Holloways and the Ortegas, et cetera, in the UFC, he's on a run of 4 fights here where he has not exactly been setting the world on fire. Yes, he's still 3-1 in them, and arguably 4-0 if you scored the Pitbull fight for him. But he's also arguably 1-3. Like, he certainly didn't look so incredible in the second Pitbull fight, and he did pick up an actual loss there. Then yes, he bounced back and he looked really good against Spike Carlisle, but then he had a really close fight with Roberto de Souza and a really close fight with Sidney Outlaw, where he got held down for a ton of the fight. And I did score both for him. I'm not trying to hate on AJ here, but I'm just saying on the morning of August 1st, 2021, when we all woke up after having him after having watched him choke out Patricio Pitbull, I think all of our expectations were higher than what we've been getting from AJ McKee. So I think this is a really, really big fight for him, especially with a new organization. And I think he needs to look good in getting this win. And I will pick him. You know, Clay's going to be in his face. He's going to be ready for war. We know what Clay Collard brings. He's going to put hands on AJ and make him work. But AJ's never been afraid of a scrap. I mean, remember the Spike Carlisle fight I just referenced? That was craziness. And I'd like to think he can handle what Clay brings. I think we get a fight where AJ is able to kind of show off what he does best, and that's his range striking and his grappling. And part of me wants to say that he can find a sub here, but Clay has actually really worked his defensive grappling so much that I'm going to just say AJ wins a decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So AJ UD?
Yes, sir.
Yes, everything you just said is all well said and very true. I'm still taking AJ McKee. I think his talent and his skills are going to shine here. And to your point, I think that the promotions will get their wish, and I think he is going to shine. I mean, the guy is coming into his prime, and he's going to be probably one of their biggest stars moving forward. So I'm with you. I'll go AJ McKee by a UD. Okay, moving on now to Santos versus Romero. This is a fight we didn't know we were going to need this year.
Yeah.
Two UFC vets, one transplanted to Bellator, the other to PFL. Now in this merger, they meet Thiago Santos, Marreta, the Hammer, fighting out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 40 years old. His record as a professional violence doer is 22-11 with 1-0 contest, 15 knockouts out of those 22 wins. Looking to get back in the win column since October of 21 is the last time he won a fight and got his hand raised by decisioning Johnny Walker. Last time he got his hand raised before that was knocking out Jan Blachowicz in 2019, quite some time ago. The most recent fight was his no contest against Rob Wilkinson, which was overturned. Okay, so he'll be standing across from the always dangerous Yoel Romero, soldier of God, the 46-year-old ageless wonder who is fighting out of Miami, Florida. His pro record, 15-7, 13 of his 15 wins coming by way of knockout. Also looking to get back in the win column after losing to Vadim Nemkov in June of this past year. Mark, start us off. Give us your take, give us those odds, and give us your pick.
So the odds are real tight. Thiago Santos is the favorite. He's minus 120. Yoel is even money, plus 100. 2 inches of height and 2.5 inches of reach for Thiago Santos, which I actually thought was going to be more than that, just visually speaking in my brain. But I guess it's only about 2 inches in each. Two UFC vets here, as you said, both older. Santos is 40, Romero is 46, but that's only like 36 in Romero years, to be fair. I do think this fight is a coin flip simply because knowing Yoel, he probably won't wrestle. If he ever would, this would be the farthest thing from a coin flip because I think he would win easily, but he likely won't. And if he doesn't, Thiago Santos is going to have some real chances to land huge shots on the feet. So I guess him being the favorite, and I get siding with him. And I'm going to need to get up and let my cat in this room because he's trying to knock down the door and he's having a fucking heart attack.
Oh, wow. We can't
So
hear
I'll do that in a second. But to me, despite both of them picking up some high-profile losses lately, I've just seen so much more quality that still exists in the game of Yoel Romero. Like prior to the Nemkov loss, he put on absolute exhibitions against Alex Polizzi and Melvin Manhoff and finished both of them. And he was still doing like freak athlete, freak combat calmness, Yoel Romero things. And I haven't seen Thiago Santos do Thiago Santos things in a pretty long time. Not to mention Yoel won round 5 against Vadim Nemkov. So again, my point is that the talent seems to still be there more so with Yoel. So I will go with him, and I'll take him to win a UD.
Omar, your take and your pick.
It's kind of similar, to be honest. Romero is, at this point, both of these guys, I don't have a lot of confidence in their approach anymore. I think both of them, their games have changed drastically to the point where what I used to pick them for when picking for them to win, they don't necessarily do as much, if at all, anymore. Thiago Santos doesn't fight nearly the same way that he used to fight when I thought he was the most successful. And neither does Romero, for that matter. So I do think of the two, the lesser of that evil is Romero. So I will also be going Romero by decision.
This is a tough one, but I think Santos has been the more, it seems like he has lost a step pretty much since John Jones screwed up his knee. So yeah, I'll go Romero by UD. This is a fun one to see these two aging stars, but they both, I think, are aging. So I'm not anticipating a finish with this one. I think it's going to be a big guy, hard spar. And there you go. Let me clear a few of these tabs. Okay, we're going. Kapoloza versus Nemkov. Here we go. We have Bruno Kapoloza. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
I'm saying that right. On the PFL side of things, taking on Bellator's champ Vadim Nemkov. So Kapoloza, the 34-year-old out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, 15-6 and 1 no contest, 14 out of his 15 pro wins coming by way of knockout. His last fight, April of 2023 against Matheus Scheffel, was overturned, now a no contest. And now he is looking to fight Vadim Nemkov this weekend, the 31-year-old out of Oblast, Russia, 16-2 with 1 knockout, 12 finishes, 9 of those being knockouts, has not lost a fight since April of 2016, gentlemen. Most recently, he defeated Yoel Romero in June of last year. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take and your pick.
I like me some Nemkov, man. I think he's a very good fighter. I think his frame too, I think allows him to move a little bit better than a lot of the other heavyweights that you'll see out there. And I think he's very talented when it comes to the ground game as well. So I have some confidence in Nemkov to get things done here against Kapoloza. So I'm also going to be doing a decision win for Vadim Nemkov.
Mark?
So he's a pretty big favorite despite the first time at heavyweight here. He is minus 500, him being Nemkov. And Kapoloza is plus 380. 2 inches of height and 3 inches of reach for Kapoloza. So yeah, Nemkov officially vacates the Bellator light heavyweight title, which we'll see Corey Anderson and Carl Moore fight for in the not too distant future here. And he's moved up to heavyweight where he said he plans on staying. So it'll be interesting to see a guy who's been as dominant as he has going up against much bigger boys now. Thankfully for him, Kapoloza isn't a huge heavyweight, but he is absolutely a huge knockout threat. So Nemkov needs to fight a smart fight here. He needs to manage his range well and probably look to drag this one down. And that's honestly exactly what I think we see. You know, he's always been a smart fighter. He'll stick to a game plan. He'll play to his advantages. The ability to control range has always been one of his strongest suits. So, you know, we'll see if that changes now that he's the smaller man, but I'm going to trust it. And I really do think he goes wrestling heavy in this fight too. So I'll take a workman like UD for Nemkov here.
We're unanimous on this decision. I too will go UD for Mr. Nemkov. Okay, really moving up here. Ray Cooper III taking on Jason Jackson. So PFL's Ray Brada Boy Cooper III, 31 years old, out of Hawaii, 25-9 with one draw. Most recently lost to Derek Brunson this past November in the PFL final night of the year. Taking on Bellator's Jason Jackson, the ass-kicking machine, 33 years old, out of Kingston, Jamaica, 17-4 with 8 finishes. Most recently, shocked a lot of us by knocking out Yaroslav Amazov back in November. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
I like Jason Jackson here. I've always liked Jason Jackson. I liked him more after his last performance against Yaroslav Amosov. I thought the domination in that fight I thought was something that I didn't see coming, and since then I've been pretty high on Jason Jackson and against somebody like Ray Cooper, who I think is a little inconsistent. Fun to watch, but inconsistent. I think Jackson here can make a good statement. So I'm going to go Jason Jackson here. I think he stops him, and I think he does it in the second round. TKO.
Mark?
Another one where the Bellator fighter's a big favorite. Jackson is minus 410. Cooper is plus 320. 6 inches of height and 8.5 inches of reach for Jason Jackson here. So for the second fight in a row, Ray Cooper is going to be grossly outsized. Granted, this one is at least against a fellow welterweight in Jackson. But with that said, it's happening at a contract weight of 182 pounds because of the short notice. Of course, this one was supposed to be Jackson and Magomed Karamov doing the champ versus champ thing, which would have been amazing. But we get Cooper instead. And yeah, we've been through him before. He's a weird guy to read. 3 fights ago only, he was on top of the world. He had just knocked out Magomed Karamov. He was the PFL champ at the end of 2021. And then in 2022, he lost one of the most uninspired fights you've ever seen against Carlos Leal, where it looked like the Monstars took his powers. Then 2 months later, he came back and crushed Brett Cooper in typical Ray Cooper fashion. And then outside of a strong first couple minutes, he just got dominated by Derek Brunson. So, I mean, again, that one was at middleweight, so maybe we shouldn't take too much from that. But it's just been really up and down and hard to read. So, is he live? Yes, he did clip Derek Brunson at one point. Of course, he can also do the same to Jason Jackson. But we just watched Jason Jackson put on a masterclass against Yaroslav Amosov. And am I supposed to pick against that? Because I am not going to. So he should win this fight. He hasn't lost in ages if you want to look at it a certain way. His last loss was 2019, but it was a split. So if you scored that for him, we go back to 2017, which was an injury. And if you want to ignore that, we go back to 2013, which is over a decade ago. So Jason Jackson has been looking pretty damn good. He can wrestle for days. His striking has clearly leveled up, as we saw against Amosov. Add in the 8.5-inch reach advantage and his cardio, which is a big factor for him. And this is a 5-round fight, remember, because it's for a title. So he'll have to be careful, especially in round 1. But I don't see how you do anything here besides take Jason Jackson. So I'm going to go with him. I'm going to say he finds a TKO via ground and pound in round 4.
Well said, and you're not wrong. I, too, will be rolling with Jason, the ass-kicking machine, Jackson. I agree. I think he'll find a finish in this fight against Ray Cooper. I'll say round 3, and we will go on to the next. Let's see. Yes, the co-main going down for all the gold. Impa Kasangane taking on Johnny Eblen. Kasangane, the 30-year-old PFL fighter, fighting out of North Carolina, USA, baby. 15-3 as a pro. He won PFL gold and money in November, obviously, defeating Joshua Silveira. And he'll be taking on Johnny Eblen, who puts his Bellator gold on the line this Saturday. Johnny Pressure Eblen, 32 years old, fighting out of Boca Raton, Florida, undefeated, 14-0, with 7 of those 14 wins being finishes, 6 of them knockouts. Most recently knocking out Fabian Edwards back in September. Mark, start us off this time. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, this is a fun one. I mean, most of these have been, but good fight here. Johnny Eblen, again, Bellator guy, pretty big favorite. Minus 400 for Johnny Eblen. Impa is plus 310. 2 inches of height for Johnny, 1 inch of reach for Impa. And I'm really glad this is the direction the PFL decided to go with Impa. Obviously, they could have looked at light heavyweight, but I think this was the fight to make. Eblen has been dying for another interesting challenger, and now he finds one. And Impa certainly is interesting. You know, he's on a hell of a run since leaving the UFC. He's won 6 in a row now with finishes in 4 of them, and he just made Josh Silveira look pretty bad in that PFL final. Problem for him is Johnny Eblen ain't Josh Silveira, and I think the feel-good story for Impa ends right here. I think the wrestling from Johnny is going to make all the difference in this fight, and I know, you know, you may say, well, Impa just stuffed every takedown against Silveira, but again, those takedowns do not even resemble what Johnny Eblen is bringing into this cage. And I think he is going to take Impa down more than once, grind him out, and eventually put him out. I'm not saying there may not be a hairy moment for Johnny in round 1 or round 2. You know, he had that against Fabian Edwards recently too, where he got clipped at one point, and Impa can do that. But I think Johnny will be fine, lean on the wrestling. And from there, his top game is just frightening. And I think he's going to show that again. I'll go Johnny Eblen round 3 TKO.
I'll get mine out of the way, Omar. I totally agree. I think Eblen's going to maul him and make it look relatively easy. Eblen by a dominant UD. Omar, take it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, to be honest. I trust Eblen more when it comes to his ground game and his ability to take it down there, keep it down there. Impa Kasangana is definitely not the guy to fuck around with, though. So Johnny Eblen's definitely got to be relatively perfect in there, not get caught with something crazy from that man. But I do think Eblen has the skills to get it done, so I'm going to go with Eblen by decision.
Okay, main event time. PFL versus Bellator. Ryan Bader versus Renan Ferreira, or Ferreira, or however the hell you say that name. In
Ferreira,
Brazilian Portuguese. Ferreira. Ryan Darth Bader, 40 years old, out of Tempe, Arizona, 31-7, with 13 knockouts to his name, riding a 3-fight win streak, defeating Valentin Moldavsky, Czech Congo, and Fedor Emelianenko back in February of 2023, knocking out Fedor, might I add. And now he's taking on a much younger man than Fedor in Renan Ferreira, 34 years old, out of Brazil, 12-3 with 3 no contests. Wow, 3 no contests. All of his wins coming by finish. One of them by a decision, 10 knockouts and 1 submission. Most recently winning all the money in PFL's finals in November by defeating Denis Golsov by TKO. Omar, start us off with this one. Last one for this guy and until we jump into the UFC Fight Night card. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, you know I'm generally not one to stand for Bader, but heavyweight Bader isn't really bad, man. He's got a good combination of being a big guy with the movement, the mobility, and the hand speed of somebody who is smaller than a heavyweight. It works for him. On top of the fact that his grappling and his ability to take people down is pretty damn decent as well. So I think Bader's got the tools here to make this to win this. As long as he doesn't get caught in something stupid from a submission standpoint, I think Bader should have this one in the bag. And I'm going to go with Bader here. I would imagine at some point Ferreira is probably going to try to go for a leg lock because he is who he is, and I think he might end up paying for it. I think that's the way we're going. So I'm going to go with Ryan Bader here by TKO round 3.
I'm going to oppose you. I think Renan Ferreira gets it done over Bader. I think he knocks him out. I think it's just going to be too big, too powerful for Bader to handle. I think Bader, at times, he can't get chin checked, and I think that's going to happen here. I'm going to go round 1, knockout, and new for Ferreira. Mark?
All right, so this one's tight. Bader is favored. He's minus 150. Ferreira is plus 125. 6 inches of height and 11 inches of reach for Renan Ferreira. I've picked 6 Bellator fighters through 6 fights to this point. Even if I do go Bader here and make it 7 for 7, I'm sure that doesn't actually happen. I figure somebody from PFL will upset the apple cart here. But I may go ahead and say it's this one. 6 inches of height and 11 inches of reach is insane. And we saw against Denis Goltsov, who's got 3 inches and maybe like 15 pounds on Ryan Bader, that Renan Ferreira was able to survive when taken down. And if he can do that against Bader and get himself multiple chances on the feet, I think he's going to find Bader's chin. I don't have much doubt about that. But the question is, can he do that? Because Ryan Bader may also grind him into dust, because Ryan Bader is a hell of a wrestler. And in my opinion, is the best wrestler Ferreira's faced thus far. Better than Goltsov, better than Ante Delia. And he's also undefeated at heavyweight, which people don't realize. He has 6 heavyweight fights. He's won 5, one's a no contest. All his knockouts happened down at 205 when he was, cutting the weight, and maybe his chin was not the same. His chin has seemed much improved up at heavyweight. But where I get hung up is I just don't know if Renan Ferreira's power cares about any of that. I'm not sure there's a chin out there that man can't crack. So I don't know. I'm torn. I think it's a true 2 outcome fight. Like, if you get it wrong, I think you're going to look bad, because I think whoever wins it is going to do it early and dominantly, just Ferreira standing or Bader on the ground. And I think it's a coin flip as to which one we get. But I'm going to go with Renan Ferreira. Ryan Bader's 40. PFL fighter's got to win one of these. I'll say it's this one. Renan Ferreira, round 1 knockout.
Nice. Okay, here we go. Saturday night, UFC Fight Night. Moreno versus Royval 2. Going down in Mexico City at the Mexico City Arena. Oh, baby. It's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Quite a card. We're going to talk about, let's see, 6 or 7 of these fights. Before we do, any fights that you guys want to quickly spotlight for our fans and listeners?
I think there's a lot of fights on here that may end up being scraps that are pretty evenly matched. Some of them are maybe a bit lower level than others, but one that I do really like is Hani Barcelos. As you guys know, I'm always a fan of him, against Christian Quinones. I think that is a fun fight. And I also really like Fares Siam against Claudio Puelles. Claudio Puelles. Wow, I'm fucking up a lot of names right now. My fault. But yeah, Fares Siam has looked really solid lately, and Puelles, obviously, we know what he brings. So I think that's pretty interesting style clash to see if Fares can keep him off him in that one.
Omar?
Yeah, honestly, man, the Claudia Puelles one is the one that I was looking forward to the most. The Fares Siam is definitely a fun fighter. I've been enjoying watching Puelles fight and get the subs that he's been getting. And yeah, just interested to see him continue his momentum.
Okay, let's start this off in the lightweight division. The first fight on the main card, once again going down in Mexico City. Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. Omar, give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, Manuel Torres is a motherfucker, man. This is a great way to start this card out, as far as I guess the main card is concerned. But Manuel Torres is a really, really, really good fighter. He's had some really good performances, even in the UFC so far. Obviously, we're going to need to see more from him other than a guy like a Chris Duncan. But I still think we're at the point of his career where he's building up that highlight reel, getting the opportunity to really put on some good performances and some good shows. And I think we're going to continue that momentum here, and I think he gets another round 1 KO.
It's a round 1 KO for El Loco. Okay, Mark.
All right, close odds. Torres is minus 160. Chris Duncan is plus 130. The height is the same. Torres is going to have a 1.5 inch reach advantage. I definitely think they're looking to showcase, the Mexican Manuel Torres here if they can. He has 2 first-round knockouts through his first 2 UFC fights thus far. And Duncan's also 2-0 through 2 fights in the octagon. And he has looked good. He's shown that he can mix it up, take the fight where he needs to take it to get the W. The one knock on both of these guys, I feel like, that I've noticed so far through their 2-fight careers in the UFC is that they'll get hit. Duncan will almost willingly take one to give one. Torres more so is the guy who at times has his chin up in the air and gets caught. So I do see some chins getting tested here. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Torres, even though he makes me nervous. I think he's the harder hitter of the two. and he's also the one who has never been finished by strikes. So I'll trust him, and I'll go Torres round 2 knockout.
Well, we are unanimous on this one. I think this is nice matchmaking, honestly, for where both these guys are at. Both recent Contender Series grads. But man, just the eye test for Manuel Torres. The guy is a finisher. He has such great hands, heavy hands. I'm going to say that he gets another one and hand Chris Duncan his second knockout loss of his career. I'll say knockout is going to come in the second round, as I usually do. Okay, next up, women's strawweight division. We have, let's see, Mexico's Yasmin Hadaway taking on USA's Sam Hughes. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
Yes, my girl is back in action in Yasmin Hadaway.
Wow, I have no idea who you'll pick in this one.
It's going to be a long shot. You already know, man. I'm excited to see her fight. I love the way that she fights. Her striking, I thought, was on point. She got caught in her last fight. There wasn't really much to that fight. It was pretty quick. I can't even remember who she fought.
Denise Gomes.
Oh, Denise Gomes. Yeah, 20 seconds. It was like the first exchange they had, and she got caught early. Hopefully, I mean, I can't see that happening against Sam Hughes. In fact, I would imagine as long as she can keep the fight standing, Yasmin Hadaway is going to have a fun night picking Sam Hughes apart. So I'm going to go Yasmin Hadaway here. I don't know if she finishes her. I'm going to go with the third round KO, though. I'm feeling it. But you know, I wouldn't surprise me if we end up going to a decision.
Okay, Mark.
She is a big favorite, despite just getting knocked out. She's minus 500, and Sam Hughes is plus 380. 2 inches of height and a half inch of reach for Sam Hughes. And yeah, Yasmin needs to have this one, or she risks really starting to underwhelm based on the early hype that she had going for herself, that obviously she still has going as a minus 500 favorite. So she's got to get this. Obviously, the last fight didn't go her way. She was put down really quickly before she could really even get into her game. So it's possible that was an aberration. We'll see if she can right the ship here. And Sam Hughes is tough as hell, man. She never goes away. She'll battle on the feet. She'll battle in the grappling. She'll try to outwork you. She's not an easy night, but I'm going to lean toward Hadaway and trust the technique. I think she'll be cleaner. I think she'll just be generally outpointing Sam in this one. And I'm not sure that Hughes can do enough with the wrestling to change this fight. So I'm going to roll confidently with Yasmin to win a UD.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Nothing. You froze just a smidge. You're good, though.
Yeah, you're good.
Yasmin UD was
you froze to us. That's okay. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think Yasmin comes away with the victory here. I'll be a little more go out on a limb here. I think she's going to find the finish. Let's not forget she has a 70% knockout rate, finish rate out of her 10 wins. So you're right. I agree. Sam Page, she's a tough girl, but I think Hadaway's technique and power are going to shine through in this one. I'll say round 3 TKO for Hadaway. Here we go. Fun one. Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Ricky Pretty Tercios in the bantamweight division. So the very young 19-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. fighting out of California. He is 8-1 as a young professional, with only one of those 8 wins going the distance. And most recently, he finished Terrence Mitchell riding the horse after losing for the first time ever against Christian Rodriguez. Here we go. His opponent, the ever-quotable Ricky Tercios, 30 years old, out of Houston, Texas, 12-3 as a pro. Most recently, split decision over Kevin Natividad. Omar, take it once again. Give us your take and your pick.
It's an interesting little combination of a fight here we have between Rosas Jr. and Tercios. 2 guys who I think could be better in different aspects of the game. I think one, obviously in Rosas Jr., you have somebody who's very comfortable in the ground game. Obviously he has hands and things like that, but his wrestling, I think is really his bread and butter. And Tercios is a guy who just works hard, man. He doesn't really have like a single attribute or a single area of expertise that he really excels in, at least to a degree where I would say he's exceedingly dangerous. He's just a scrapper and a worker, and he's been able to make it, succeed and make it work in his career so far. But he's edged out a lot of fights, and things are not going to get easier for him. I would imagine Rosas Jr. is just better than him overall from what we've seen recently, unless something has changed. But as a result of that, I'm going to go with Rosas Jr. here. I'm going to go with the second round submission win.
Mark?
So Rosas Jr. is pretty big favorite. He's minus 275. Tercios is plus 215. The height is the same. Tercios does have a 4-inch reach, which he should really try to lean on because Tercios can be out wrestled, and we know that Rosas is going to look to go that route. So anything Tercios can do to keep that space in this fight is going to benefit him. And I'm not saying he can't grapple, because he can. I just think that's not where you want to be with Rosas Jr., because I think the physicality is going to make a big difference in this fight, and it's pretty heavy on Raul's side of things. What's interesting, though, is that Tercios has cardio for days, and we are not sure if Rosas does. We've seen it be an issue before, and obviously we are in Mexico City at high as all fuck altitude. So I'm curious if we see that come into play. And Tercios, if we remove the one super weird Zahabi fight where he beat up the air for 15 minutes, is usually super active and looking to hurt you from every position. So he's going to be keeping a pace at least. So this could be tougher for Rosas than people think, especially if it goes late. But gun to my head, I still am going to trust the grappling, and just the physical superiority is what I'm struggling to pick against of Raul Rosas Jr. So I'll say he wins a UD.
I agree. I think that Tercios is a wild man in some cases, but I like the just the tenacity that Rosas Jr. has displayed thus far. I agree. I think he's going to grind his way to a UD and be back on a win streak here. Gotta love Pretty Ricky, though. Okay, lightweight division. Daniel Zellhuber versus, out of Mexico, by the way, versus the Argentine Francisco Prado. Mark, go first.
All right, Zellhuber, pretty big favorite again in this one. Minus 275. Francisco Prado plus 225. 2 inches of height and 1 inch of reach for Zellhuber. And actually, I don't know about that, because Francisco Prado's reach is listed wildly different in some different places, I noticed. So it could be like 1 inch of reach. It could be like 6 inches of reach. I really, and if it's, I'm already picking Zellhuber. If it's 6, I'm picking him even more. But it is a bit of a tough call, because yes, I do think Zellhuber appears to be the better overall fighter thus far. He's been pretty slick on the feet. He'll wrap up a sub if you let him. He can take it to the grappling a bit. He's shown really good takedown defense. A lot of positives for him. But he can be hit. We saw it in his last fight against Christos Giagos, where he had to navigate some rough moments in round 1. And if there's a dude you don't want to get hit by, it is Francisco Prado. He is a savage and a killer, and he's going to be looking for the off switch as long as this fight lasts. So I think it is a dangerous fight for Daniel Zellhuber. I could even see myself change my mind as this week goes on, and I think more about it, but I think I'm going to say Zellhuber mixes it up just enough to stay conscious and win 2 of these rounds. So I will go UD for Zellhuber.
Omar.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Zellhuber as well. I just think he's a little bit more consistent. I think Prado has the power advantage on there. Wouldn't surprise me if Prado ended up catching a body here as well. But I think the recipe itself looks like it's probably going to work out or more in favor for Zellhuber and what we have going on this weekend. So I'm going to go with Zellhuber here. I don't think he knocks out Prado, but I do think he ends up getting a submission win. I'm sorry, a decision win. So at least 2 out of the 3 here.
I'm with you, man. I think he's going to have that crowd behind him, obviously. This is an interesting matchup. But I will go with Zellhuber by knockout. I'll say round 2. Okay. Now it gets really fun. Co-main event in the featherweight division. Yair El Pantero Rodriguez taking on Brian T-City Ortega. So I will cue this up because they deserve it. Yair, 31 years old, out of Mexico. Obviously. 19-4 with 1 no contest, with 8 knockouts on his record. Most recently, he got TKO'd by the great Alexander Volkanovski, trying to unify their belts in that one. And here we go. Brian T-City Ortega, 32 years old, out of Torrance, California. 15-3 with 1 no contest. 10 finishes, 7 of those being submissions, obviously. Also looking to right the ship here and get back in the win column after back-to-back losses. The most recent one, I don't really consider it that much of a loss. A TKO injury against Yair Rodriguez back in July of 2022 due to his shoulder popping out in the middle of a scramble of a grappling exchange. I don't see how that can really be a loss for Ortega. It's a freak thing. Not really caused by Yair. So here we go. Ortega finally back in the octagon, taking on the always electric Yair Rodriguez. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
I like both of these guys. I think this is a very difficult fight to choose. You obviously have 2 guys who are well-rounded, both in each other's respects, right? So Yair Rodriguez, while his bread and butter is his striking, his fluidity, his dexterity in his legs, he's also very good on the ground. He's very good with his submission game. He's very good with his BJJ and being able to move from position to position. And Brian Ortega, you could argue, is the opposite of that, right? His bread and butter is the ground game, knowing how to find those submissions and work his way there. But he can also crack, man. He'll lay you out with a knee. He'll nail you out with an elbow. He'll punch. He'll kick. Brian Ortega is just as much of a threat on his feet as he is on the ground. And I think that's what makes this fight so interesting. It's you really have 2 ninjas trying to figure out who's better than who, at least on that Saturday. So I think it's a difficult fight to really nail down and really put on the line who you think is better. But I did go with Yair Rodriguez here for unanimous decision. I just think he can win 2 out of 3 rounds, especially if he fights the fight smart. But you know, Yair Rodriguez is not known to be perfect, but I think he can get it done.
Okay, Mark.
Yair is favored. He's minus 175. Ortega's plus 145. Yair is 3 inches taller. He'll have a 2-inch reach. Yeah, man, freaking Brian Ortega hasn't fought in 19 months, over a year and a half on the sidelines. So it's a long time. It's a big factor for me in this fight. He's coming off multiple surgeries and what were apparently some real dark times where he wasn't sure whether it was even worth it to continue trying to get back. Where he was wondering if he should even try to be a fighter going forward. Now, I love Brian Ortega. I picked Brian Ortega the first time these 2 fought back in 2022. And if you ask me to break this down style for style and how I think these 2 match up with each other, I think I'd still be leaning toward Brian Ortega. Like, yes, he's at a disadvantaged standing, but I think he's okay enough. He's improved so much since the start of his UFC career there. He takes really nice angles. He makes guys miss. He walks them into counters. And, of course, we know he can absorb damage with the best of them. We've seen him take some ungodly beatings in there. And I think he can get Yair to the mat. We saw him do that in their first fight right before the injury. And as much as Yair's a nasty grappler as well, I don't love him in the grappling against Ortega because Yair, as good as he is, he can be controlled. We just saw him get out-wrestled and out-grappled by Max Holloway not that long ago. And I also think he has a bit of a Dustin Poirier quality about him where he can be reckless with his escapes and just too confident. And Brian Ortega will make you pay badly for making a mistake in the grappling. So breakdown-wise, in a vacuum, I do still think I favor Brian Ortega. The problem is I can't pick a guy who hasn't fought in 19 months and whose body was failing so badly that he almost decided there was no point in doing this anymore. So I would love to be wrong. I've always been a fan of Ortega. I love Yair too, but I'm going to have to go with Yair in this fight. Ring rust is a real thing, and I just think there's so many factors contributing to it on that side for Brian Ortega. And it's at elevation, which is just another fucking kick in the dick for returning to actively fighting.
Totally.
So I'll go with Yair to winning UD just by virtue of looking sharper, staying ahead. Maybe he does have one bad round on the mat, but otherwise I'll say UD for Yair.
Dude, you make all great points. The layoff is too much. Just too much. And to come back against a guy who throws as much firepower as Yair, I think it's just too tall of an order for Ortega. I have a little bit of pause in that because Ortega, he is just like a winner, man. Ortega, he has such a solid record when you look at it and you're like, damn, this guy wins a lot. His only 3 losses happened in the past, few years. His past 4 fights are his only 3 losses of his whole career. So I'm sure he very much wants to get back to his winning ways, but Yair, I think, is going to be throwing too much firepower at him. Across 3 rounds, I'm going to go Yair 29-28 or 30-27, Yair by UD. And that brings us to the main event here of this fight night. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Brandon on Brandon violence. Here we go. Brandon Royval, Raw Dog is his nickname, let's not forget. 31 years old, out of Englewood, Colorado. 15-7 as a pro. Looking to get back in the win column against Moreno here in their rematch after losing to Pantoja for the second time back in December.
I have just realized something.
What's wrong?
Ortega and Yair is a 5-round fight.
Oh, they made that 5 rounds.
Yeah. And
Damn.
I remember it now. And I remember being thrilled when I heard it, but I forgot about it just because it's a co-main and I didn't think about it. I guess that doesn't change. I almost like Ortega more because now he has more time to find a grappling situation. But I guess I'm gonna keep my pick still.
Yeah, I'll still say UD.
You guys keeping yours? Yeah. All right.
I'll keep mine.
Sorry to interrupt. That was noteworthy.
But you're right. It does give me pause. I thought the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's better for Ortega. I think a 5-round fight. I think. Okay. Where was I? Mr. Assassin Baby. 21-7 as a pro with 2 draws. Also coming off of a loss at the hands of Alexandre Pantoja. For him back in July via split decision, losing his belt to the Brazilian. Now he is facing off against the American, once again, Brandon Royval. Omar, would you like to start us off? Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah. I think you guys already know I don't pick against Brandon Moreno. It's just ever. It's just not going to happen. The fact of the matter is Brandon's gotten better over time. I think Brandon Royval's game, while he's good at what he does, I think has stayed relatively consistent for better or worse. Moreno, you can see the significant changes that he's made to his game, the additions he's made to the kick game, among other things. So I see more potential in Moreno as I normally do. I think he's got a lot to offer, especially in this fight. And I think that the longer the fight goes, I think it favors Moreno. But I do think that he closes out the night with a submission 4th round against Priaulx.
As much as you guys know that I'm a big Brandon Royval fan, I don't think that would be a smart pick in this spot. I agree. I think that the Assassin Baby is just too talented at flyweight for Royval. For all of Royval's talents and chaos that he brings into a fight, I'm going to go with the Assassin Baby. And these flyweights, man, they find finishes, man. I'm not going with the UD on this one. I think that Moreno finds a finish. I think maybe a club and sub. I'll say round 4 for Moreno. Mark, take it home. God.
Wow, you've held the confidence all show long. It finally made its way out at the last possible moment.
Thank you.
All right, Moreno's minus 260. Royval is plus 210. 2 inches of height and a half inch of reach on the Royval side. Yes, he stepped in for Amir Albazi here, but they've each had a pretty solid amount of time prepping for each other. And of course, they've fought once already, which always helps, which ended due to the injury for Royval. Really, it ended by TKO because it kind of continued after his shoulder came out. But it was due to the injury. So it's nice that we get to see this again and get a true answer here. Very weird, as I'm just realizing that both the main and co-main on this card are rematches of a fight that ended because someone's shoulder got fucked up. So that's strange. But yeah, I think Brandon Moreno will get his rightful W in this one. I just think he's better, man. I know Royval can be dangerous, which he showed recently against, dangerous on the feet, which he showed recently against Nicolau. And of course, he's a submission threat at all times. But Brandon Moreno's a guy who's never been finished in any way through 30 pro fights, which is insane. I know Pantoja tapped him on tough, if you want to count that, but that was like 8 years ago. So the point remains, even if we include that, Moreno's no easy out. And I think he's better than Royval. I think he's the better striker with much better footwork, better angles, quicker hands, more power, in my opinion. I like him a lot in the striking. And then I also think he might be the better wrestler. Like, of course, Royval is going to be scrambling and looking to latch something up anytime they're connected. But I think Brandon can generally control it and stay safe. I think he can be in control for most of this fight, especially as it goes later in the fight. And I know Brandon Royval has never been finished by strikes, but I'm actually going to say that changes. You know, in front of the Mexican crowd, they're going to be crazy behind Moreno here. His hands are just looking so crispy lately. I think he wears Royval down with a pace, hurts him a couple times, and then maybe eventually puts him out with some ground and pound. So I'll go TKO round 4 for Brandon Moreno.
Wow, same as me. Oh my God. Well, boys, we did it. That was a colossal episode. It took us about 6.5, 7 hours, but we did it. And I think in timely fashion. What are we at here?
I predicted it'd be 12:15. It's 12:11. That was pretty fucking good.
Very good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Very good.
I would just like to point out that we just predicted 13 fights, and we were unanimous on 12 of them.
Wow.
That's fucking crazy. I mean, there was a lot of fights with wide odds, which explains that a little bit. But yeah, the only difference was Omar took Bader, and we took Ferreira.
That's the only difference?
Yeah, and who would have thought? Great point.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Well,
I
folks,
don't think I've ever taken Bader on this fucking show.
enjoyed the fights this weekend, PFL versus Bellator, and UFC action as well. That being said, signing off. I gotta go to bed.
Yep. I'm halfway there, kid.
I gotta be up in less than 5 hours. So yeah, good times.
Not great.
Yikes.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.